So, does the mysterious Devil's Gardens in the Amazon rainforest ring any bells? Don't worry, it's not some spooky phenomenon. It's the work of some tiny but mighty insects called the lemon ants. These ants inject a natural herbicide, formic acid, into any other plant that is not the tree species that they call home. By doing this, they create a space for their treehouse saplings to grow, allowing the ant colony to expand as it occupies new nesting sites in the saplings. That's some efficient gardening, if you ask me. But don't be fooled. These devil gardens are not just a bunch of boring old trees. In fact, they are botanical anomalies that grow very slowly every year, and some of them are over 800 years old. Who knew ants could create such impressive and long-lasting structures? Of course, the rainforest is still one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, with a remarkable diversity of plant life. But it's fascinating to see the control ants can have over their environment, creating single-species structures in such a complex ecosystem. But where does the name Devil's Garden come from? We know ants are to blame, but is there something else hiding in the Amazon rainforest? Well, picture this. You're strolling along, taking in the lush foliage, when suddenly you stumble upon a clearing. But wait, there's something strange about this patch of land. There's no vegetation, just a handful of trees standing alone in the dirt. What's going on here? It's easy to understand why people came up with this name after seeing the weird stretch of vegetation. And as humans do, they came up with quite an impressive legend to back up the story. It was said that the inhabitant of this eerie oasis was a shape-shifting evil spirit, like me. Just kidding. This little guy may have looked like a misshapen person walking on one hoof and one human foot. But don't be fooled. He supposedly had a whole bag of tricks up his sleeve, including the ability to transform into someone you know and lead you down the path to doom. Hey, it's just a myth, but you have to admit it was quite convincing, right? Clever landscaping ants aside, there are a lot of unsolved mysteries hidden in the Amazon rainforest, like its unusual geoglyphs, for example. Humans have been getting creative with the Earth's surface for ages. Geoglyphs are just one of the many ways we've left our mark on this planet. Basically, we take some sand or stones, move them around a bit, and voila! We've got ourselves a funky design that pops against the backdrop of the ground. A new study found that the area was home to up to 1 million people before Columbus first arrived in the New World back in 1492. That's a lot of people, and they left behind some pretty cool stuff. The Amazon rainforest is already amazing, with 1 in 10 known species in the world living there, and 1 in 5 of Earth's birds. But did you know that over the past few decades, archaeologists have discovered evidence of numerous large, complex societies that may have inhabited Amazonia? It turns out that the Amazon rainforest was not just a pristine wilderness, but a hub of human activity as well. These South American geoglyphs are particularly interesting. They're these huge structures that combine square, circular, and hexagonal shapes. Archaeologists have found very few remains of habitation inside the enclosures, which suggests they were not settlements. Instead, the most likely explanation is that they were used for ceremonial gatherings. The exact function of these structures is still a mystery, though. To find out how widespread human settlements were in the Amazon, scientists focus on the basin of the upper reaches of the Tapias River, a major tributary of the Amazon. Using satellite images, they discovered 81 new archaeological sites in the upper Tapias Basin, with a total of 104 earthworks. That means there is no gap in the network of earthworks spanning across Amazonia's southern rim. When researchers conducted ground surveys of 24 of these sites, they found evidence that the sites they visited were once inhabited. These sites dated from 1250 to 1500 CE and ranged from about 100 to 1300 feet wide. The largest were typically hexagonal fortified settlements, suggesting a certain degree of planning and uniformity in their construction. Based on the size and distributions of the earthworks, The researchers suggested that similar settlements may have extended over about 154,000 square miles of the southern rim of the Amazon, supporting a population of between 500,000 and 1 million people in late pre-Columbian times. Of course, the new study doesn't mean the Amazon rainforest was ever a teeming megalopolis. It's still mostly uncharted, so we have no idea how pre-Columbian populations were distributed across Amazonia. But it's exciting to learn about these ancient societies and the cool things they left behind. The scientists plan to do more excavations in the Upper Tapios Basin to refine their understanding of the cultural developments there. Who knows what they'll find next? Maybe a lost city full of treasure and adventure. Also hidden in the vast habitat of the Amazon is this next quirky creature. Ever heard of the Amazon pink river dolphins? Unfortunately, there is still so much we don't know about them. First things first, though, let's talk about what they look like. So picture this, a small, light-colored dolphin with a pink nose and lips. They're the Barbie of dolphins. Aside from that, they look like regular dolphins with plump bodies, bulbous foreheads, skinny snouts, chubby cheeks, and small eyes. They can be found in countries like Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. They're also the only species of river dolphin found in the Amazon River. Unfortunately, these little guys are officially critically endangered species, so there are not many specimens available that scientists can study. No other name is more famous when it comes to exploring the Amazon rainforest than that of Percy Fawcett. He dedicated his life to exploring the area in search of a lost city. And not just any city, but an ancient, mysterious city that he called Z. Sounds like something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie, right? Percy was born in England in 1867 and had quite a career before he started exploring. But he didn't let his profession hold him back from following his dreams of exploring South America. In fact, he made 7 expeditions to the Amazon between 1906 and 1924, each time getting closer to uncovering the secrets of Z. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how large the Amazon rainforest is. How big is it? I asked myself. It's so big that you could fit the whole of the UK and Ireland into it a whopping 17 times. That's a lot of trees and animals to navigate through. But Percy was up for the challenge. Despite his best efforts, Percy never found the lost city of Z, and sadly, he disappeared during his final expedition in 1925. But his legacy lived on through the years, inspiring many to become archaeologists and explorers themselves. In fact, a book called The Lost City of Z was written about Percy's adventures and was even made into a movie. It's not all hidden mysteries and wild nature out there. There are around 1 million indigenous folks living their best lives in the Amazon rainforest. That's right, they hunt, fish, farm, and even have access to Western medicine and education. But here's the kicker. Not all of these folks are keen on socializing with outsiders, and can you blame them? For years, loggers, miners, and ranchers have been, shall we say, behaving badly toward these communities. It's no wonder that some tribes have chosen to stay isolated and protect themselves from the dangers of the outside world. In fact, in 2018, Brazilian authorities were able to snap a photo of a man dubbed the Indigenous Man in the Hole. He's the last remaining member of his tribe. But don't feel too bad for him. He's doing just fine on his own and has made it pretty clear that he's not interested in outside visitors. The authorities still leave him some seeds and tools, though, so it's not all bad news. Well, meet the tiny terrors of our world. Fire ants. When they sting, they inject venom that can cause serious trouble. For most people, it's just a fiery sensation in raised bumps. But for others, especially those who are allergic to it, it's life-threatening. These ants set up their camps right under your feet. They're quick to swarm and are fiercely protective of their colonies. They show no mercy to intruders. Their stings are rated about 1.2 on the Schmidt Insect Sting Index, where 4 is the maximum. It feels like a sudden jolt, but the sensations are less burning than when a bee stings you. They originated in tropical regions like Central and South America. But now you can find them even in some temperate zones like North America. In their colonies, fire ants have a strict hierarchy: a queen, winged males and females, and different types of workers. They communicate through chemicals and sounds. The most famous member of this genus is the red imported fire ant. They've come from South America and invaded the southern U.S. They build large mounds, making farming difficult and damaging crops. It's almost impossible to control them. And on top of that, there's now the rise of another invasive species, the tawny crazy ant. This one poses a threat to native ecosystems. Turns out ants can be dangerously unfriendly. Colorful blister beetles are among the 10 most dangerous insects in the world. Luckily, they're not lethal to humans unless they go for you in a big pack. However, they pose a serious threat to large animals such as horses. Blister beetles produce a toxin called cantharidin, which causes skin blistering in humans. In the past, people believed it could treat warts and even rabies, and some even used it in love potions. However, it's a risky game. In the 1950s, a man was jailed for giving cantharidin-laced candies to 2 women, resulting in a tragic outcome. These beetles are not to be messed with. Handling them or ingesting them is very dangerous. They're attracted to alfalfa and hay. If a horse eats either of those, even a few beetles can release enough cantharidin to end it. This cute caterpillar from South America is called Linomia obliqua, and it's the most dangerous caterpillar on Earth. It's responsible for several fatalities due to its potent venom. It's the larval stage of the giant silkworm moth. When it grows up, it becomes a beautiful and harmless silkworm. But if you see them as youngsters, it's better to stay away. Its toxicity stems from venom-injecting bristles. They serve as a defense mechanism against predators. The poison messes up how your blood clots and can cause really bad symptoms like burning feelings, throwing up, kidney problems, and sometimes even lethal outcomes. A single bite probably won't lead to anything horrifying. It delivers only a tiny amount of venom. But these caterpillars tend to congregate, and they're quite good at camouflage. This increases the risk of multiple stings. Locusts themselves aren't dangerous to humans. They're ordinary, loud grasshoppers. But they're infamous for their swarming behavior. These swarms often happen when there's a dry period with no rain, and then suddenly a lot of rain falls and plants start growing fast. Once it begins, it's nearly impossible to stop. They can become a destructive force within minutes. Throughout history, locust plagues have been devastating, wreaking havoc on crops and farmland. What's interesting is that the term locust can mean different things depending on where you're from. In some places, we're talking about cicadas, which are also known for their loud sounds. But true locusts are ancient creatures, relatively unchanged since the Triassic era. They're among the oldest insects on Earth. Wasps, hornets, and even bees can be extremely dangerous, especially to those allergic to their stings. The Asian giant hornet is the largest of the wasps. It can reach up to 2 inches in size. It packs a powerful venom that can cause serious discomfort and even spray into people's eyes. There's an even more venomous species in the Philippines called Vespa luctuosa, not to be confused with Expecto Patronum. Any Harry Potter fans? Anyway, fatalities because of wasps or bees are rare but not unheard of. In the UK, about 10 people pass away each year from bee or wasp sting reactions. Always stay cautious. All these insects are very territorial and will fiercely defend their hives. When provoked, they signal danger to nearby bees and instigate a mass defense effort. If you need to handle them, it's best to call professionals. A flea is tiny and humble, but it left a colossal impact on human history and health. They're not just annoying pests, they're notorious carriers of various human conditions and are responsible for some of the worst outbreaks in history. Back in the 14th century, I forget where I was, but the bubonic plague wiped out over 25 million people in Europe, and fleas were a big part of spreading it. Fleas spend their lives searching for warm-blooded hosts to feed on, whether it's reptiles, mammals, pets, or humans. Despite their tiny size and absence of wings, they make up for it with impressive jumping abilities. They can leap 6 feet and jump over 1,200 feet in the air. A flea bite might seem like a minor annoyance, causing itching and inflammation, but a lot of them can lead to anemia in their hosts. Of course, the most dangerous part about them is the viruses, bacteria, and worms they transmit. Kissing bugs mostly live in both Americas, with smaller populations in Africa and Asia. Despite the friendly name, they're great at passing on bacteria, viruses, and parasites. One of the parasites they carry is Trypanosoma cruzi. It's the culprit behind illnesses that affect millions globally and claim thousands of lives each year. What's interesting is that symptoms don't often appear until 10 or 30 years after being bitten. They typically manifest as heart failure, digestive issues, or nervous system problems. They don't actually kiss you, they suck on you and are attracted to their prey by breath. If you breathe through your mouth, you're a target. They're messy biters, often biting chaotically and almost uncontrollably, which only adds to their unsettling nature. Many have heard of the tsetse fly, an unusual and scary insect from tropical Africa. These flies are carriers of one of the most devastating human diseases, sleeping sickness. Similar to the kissing bug, the tsetse fly transmits trypanosomes, the parasites that cause sleeping sickness. They acquire this parasite from an infected host or from within the fly's own body. Sleeping sickness doesn't strike immediately. After a bite, it takes 1 to 3 weeks for symptoms to appear: fever, headaches, joint pains, and itchiness. As the illness progresses, it can invade the nervous system, leading to confusion, insomnia, and loss of balance. Without treatment, it can result in a coma and then a fatal outcome. Luckily, sleeping sickness can be treated, and the number of losses is declining. The tsetse fly holds historical significance too. Its presence has hindered European colonial expansion in Africa. And the crown of the most dangerous insect in the world goes to the mosquito. It's no surprise why. Despite their small size, they wield a massive impact. They're not only responsible for more human losses annually than any other animal, but they've also left an indelible mark on history. These little insects influenced the rise and fall of entire civilizations. For example, malaria significantly weakened ancient civilizations, such as in Rome and Greece. What's interesting is that it's not just the mosquitoes themselves that are dangerous, but the parasites. Bacteria and viruses carry and transmit through their bites. These tiny horrors spread a buffet of diseases. Despite malaria, there's also yellow fever, which, just like with the tsetse fly, hindered European colonization efforts in tropical regions. The scariest one of them is the Anopheles mosquito. It's the apex predator of the insect world. It's responsible for more fatal outcomes and illnesses than any other insect. So, how do we combat these tiny yet mighty foes? With prevention. We need to eliminate standing water in our surroundings and practice mosquito control measures. We must always stay one step ahead to protect ourselves and our communities from dangerous insects.
The world's largest fence spans over 3,100 miles from Queensland to South Australia. If stretched out, it could easily connect London to New York. And if you'd walk next to it, you'd need 6 months to complete the journey. It wasn't built to safeguard the Australian border. Why would it, since Aussies are just surrounded by water? It wasn't meant to protect some important building either. Its purpose is to keep some animal species away from each other. It was back in the late 1800s when Australians started building parts of this fence. They wanted to create a barrier separating the lively, bustling part of the country where cities like Melbourne and Sydney thrive from the harsh, dry outback. They used wooden posts dug deep into the ground, linked up with wire mesh standing about 6 feet tall. Some parts of the fence even have a second electrically charged layer. To make sure this fence did its job, they added some red and white lights to help guard things even at night. A team of over 20 people work full-time to keep things in check here. And every year, local authorities chip in around $750,000 to keep the construction in shape. Why all this trouble? The main reason was dingoes. These gingery, wolf-like creatures are Australia's largest carnivore mammals, and they're also apex predators. They were causing a lot of trouble to local farmers, especially in southern Queensland, where they often go after sheep. For the most part, the fence has been doing its job okay, but it's not foolproof. Some dingoes still manage to sneak through. Other times, wild camels end up crashing into it. That's because Australia has quite a massive camel population roaming around. But this man-made solution did more than locals expected. They thought there would just be fewer dingoes within the fence, but fewer dingoes mean more kangaroos. And more kangaroos mean more competition with the sheep for food. It's not just the bigger species feeling the squeeze. The smaller animals and the greenery also went through changes. With all this competition in a smaller space, locals noticed less diversity in the plant life and small animals. The soil became less nutritious over time, affecting plant growth. Plus, the fence acts as a roadblock for animal migration and seed dispersal. Even the sand dunes are feeling the effects, with less grass cover to hold things together. When scientists looked at kangaroos on both sides of the fence, they noticed that the young pups inside were lighter and tinier on average. The outsiders had bigger feet and heads for their age, and it wasn't because they were eating a different diet. The kangaroos that were stuck sharing the land with dingoes had to bulk up faster to survive. On the flip side, those inside the fence took it slower because they weren't under the same type of pressure. These had to compete with a lot of other creatures for food, so a bigger size wasn't a priority anymore. Researchers are still not sure if this difference is a quick fix or a long-term gene adaptation. What about domesticating dingoes? Wouldn't that help? Many think dingoes were once pets in Australia, but it's not known for sure. These days, they're pretty wild, just like wolves, hyenas, or coyotes. Most of them don't need packs to survive and are solitary hunters with sharp instincts built in. So taming them isn't going to be easy. Still, taking down the construction is not an option for now. Australians are so strict when it comes to making sure dingoes are kept away that they even put laws in place for people who mess up with the fence. Leaving a crossing gate open can put people behind bars for up to 3 months. Damaging the fence can cost people 6 months' worth of their freedom. It wasn't the first time Australians thought a fence could help with animal issues. Before they needed it for dingoes, they experienced a serious bunny invasion. Cute as they are, rabbits were damaging the land used for farming, so locals thought of a 3-part fence. The first one stretched all the way from Ravensthorpe in the south to Pardue Station on the Pilbara coast. It was over 1,100 miles long, making it the longest unbroken fence globally at the time. All these bunny problems could have been traced back to a man named Thomas Austin. Back in 1859, when he first came to the land down under, he thought it would be a good idea to release a few rabbits into the wild, thinking it would add a bit of charm to the place. But since rabbits aren't native to Australia, they didn't have any natural predators at the time. They're also pretty adaptive creatures, needing just some grass for feeding. They reproduce at astonishing speeds too. A mama rabbit can have 4 litters a year, with as many as 5 bunnies each. Pretty soon, their numbers boomed. By the late 1880s, the bunnies had caused so much damage that local authorities came up with a proposal. They'd offer the equivalent of almost $2 million today to anyone who could come up with a solution to this long-eared problem. Nobody claimed the prize, but a commission did gather a bit over a decade later and came up with the fence idea. Maintaining those fences was complicated. They had inspectors keeping an eye, with each one responsible for a stretch about 500 miles long. There were also these boundary riders patrolling smaller sections, using bikes at first, then switching to camels or using camels to haul buggies. They even tried using cars at one point, but they couldn't handle the rough terrain and constantly had punctured tires. In terms of its effectiveness, well, by 1902, rabbits were already hanging out on the wrong side of the fence. That's why, 4 years later, they put up another one. It worked for a while, so much so that the local authorities didn't bother helping out farmers past that second fence with rabbit netting loans. Those caught between the two fences, however, still had a rough time dealing with rabbit trouble. Soon enough, rabbits spread even over fence number 2, and it was clear the solution didn't work. In some areas, even while the fences were being built, those sneaky bunnies found their way past them. To this day, the rabbit population still sometimes puts the Australian officials through rough times. The dingo fence may be the longest one, but it's not the weirdest. The aquarium fence in Turkey might take that prize. This 164-foot aquarium fence was built to make sure the expensive villa's ocean view would be visible from every one of its levels. These days, it gathers a lot of tourists from all over the world, eager to see the variety of fish it contains, and even the octopuses. Putting up a see-through structure wasn't hard. The real challenge was connecting the aqua fence to the Aegean Sea through a buried pipeline stretching across 13,000 feet of land. This ensures water constantly flows, keeping the aquarium clean and the fish happy. To make sure no one damages the delicate fence or steals any of the fish or two, the owner also invested in security. He installed a network of 17 cameras equipped with facial recognition. Visitors are free to look and take pictures, but step too close and you're likely to trigger alarms. Another one of those weird fences is New Zealand's bra fence. If you ever find yourself through central Otago, you might stumble upon a fence adorned with bras of all kinds of shapes, sizes, and patterns. Its story takes us back to 1999, when people in the area found 4 bras mysteriously hanging on the fence near Cardrona Valley Road. Some were a bit surprised, but then others started adding their bras to the decor. Some more bras appeared and it became a must-see spot for tourists. Its popularity was so high that at times it caused traffic problems in the area. Life originated in water, or so we always heard. In reality, it could have begun in ice. We know that it all started more than 3 billion years ago with simple microbes, and it's been evolving ever since. However, there are many theories about how exactly it happened. Maybe not heat, but cold was the beginning of everything. Cells were the first tiny life forms, but before we had fully developed cells, there were simpler things that couldn't survive on their own. Certain important chemicals for life, like the mentioned amino acids, usually float in water in tiny amounts. First, they needed something to help them stay together without spreading all over the place. Otherwise, they would have gotten lost in the sea. And second, they needed to stick together in groups to form more complex things. Moreover, when they started to form in groups, they started the process of evolution. They chose the best molecules to do specific tasks and kicked out the faulty ones. Without this organization, the fastest replicators, or parasites, would have taken over. There were several ways they could organize themselves. 3 billion years ago, oceans were covered in ice. And it turned out that certain important chemicals for life, such as amino acids and nucleic acids, are more stable in colder temperatures. When water freezes, these chemicals that hang out in the oceans get packed together, making it easier for life to form. Or maybe what helped them were special spots called hydrothermal vents. Imagine the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean floor, where hot water shoots out from cracks in the Earth's crust. Life might have started right there, in these extreme conditions. These vents spew out important elements like carbon and hydrogen, which are crucial for life. As the superheated water travels through the Earth's crust, it picks up other important stuff like minerals. When it finally bursts out of the vents, it creates a kind of soup rich in chemicals. In the rocky crevices around these vents, all these molecules could have come together and sparked the first signs of life. The hot, mineral-rich environment acted like a kitchen to cook the first recipes ever for living things. Even today, these vents are home to vibrant ecosystems, showing that life can thrive in extreme conditions. Ancient stories also talk about life starting from clay. It turns out that this idea has a scientific basis too. Imagine tiny particles of clay, like little grains of sand, sticking together in a structured way. As they grow and get bigger, they keep their original shape intact. They form bigger areas and clumps. They become kind of like patches, clay clumps with tiny holes inside. Each patch may be exposed to different things in the environment, like different chemicals or substances. When these outside molecules go through the clay, they get trapped along the way. Once trapped, these molecules get organized in specific patterns within the clay. This process is compared to how our genes organize things. Just like genes tell our bodies how to arrange different parts, the clay patches organize molecules. This theory was created back in the 80s, although it was very controversial at the time. We need more investigation to figure out whether this is true or not. Ancient people could have been onto something when they said that we all started with Zeus's lightning. Life itself is a chemical reaction, and it needs energy. Without energy, nothing happens. Cells are the building blocks of life. You can picture these cells as tiny factories bustling with activity, constantly working to keep you alive. Just like every factory needs a power source to keep its machines running smoothly, they need energy to do their job. In the world of cells, that power source is something called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. It's an organic molecule. There are also some backup generators with fancy names like thioesters, acyl phosphates, and reduced ferredoxin. They basically work like extra boosts. When life first started, it needed energy to make complex stuff like proteins and DNA. Back then, this energy came from the environment. It could be light, heat, chemicals, or even lightning. That lightning might have kick-started life. Back in the 1950s, scientists did something called the Miller-Urey experiment. They zapped a mix of gases that mimicked Earth's early atmosphere with electric sparks. Suddenly, that caused amino acids and sugars, the basic stuff of life, to pop out. All living things share a special code called DNA, the genetic code. It's one of the oldest and most important things about life. And we think this code existed in the very first forms of life too. This code is quite tricky. It involves putting the right building blocks, amino acids, together in the right order. And there are special molecules called tRNA and mRNA that help with this process. The early version of this code was probably simpler than what we have now. It might have used shorter instructions like using just 2 letters instead of 3. Scientists are still figuring out how DNA first appeared at all. Some think it might have started alongside metabolism, where certain molecules helped put the right building blocks together. Now, they think that the secret to understanding how DNA and proteins are formed lies in looking at RNA. RNA is a versatile player, a molecule that can do some of the jobs of both DNA and proteins. In the past, it could have been the star before DNA and proteins took over. And even though they're the main players now, RNA still has important roles in living things. For example, it can switch genes on and off, controlling how cells behave. But then comes the next question. How did RNA come to be? Well, we need to look for even simpler origins. RNA are big and complicated molecules, but life could have begun with smaller ones bumping into each other and starting chemical reactions. These reactions might have happened inside tiny capsules that acted like cell membranes. Over time, they might have evolved into more complex ones that could do the job better. In other words, life could have started with a basic recipe and slowly added more ingredients. Every living thing is made of carbon. Carbon is an essential life block. It's the stuff that makes molecules, and they form cells, tissues, and organs. Earth was very different many years ago. There were no plants or trees, and the air was different too. Instead of the oxygen we breathe now, there were gases like hydrogen, nitrogen, hydrogen sulfide, and of course, carbon dioxide, which contained carbon. In this ancient world, life might have started in a way where organisms didn't eat other organisms for energy. Perhaps they made their own food from these simple chemicals. They could eat this carbon dioxide, kind of like plants do today, and this is where they receive their carbon from. We call this autotrophic origin. They think that certain metals like iron and nickel, along with minerals containing them, played a big role in this process. These metals and minerals acted like assistants, helping chemical reactions happen that were important for life to begin. They were found all over the Earth back then, especially in places where there wasn't much oxygen. And finally, we have a wild theory that life didn't start on Earth at all. It could have been brought to us from somewhere else. Rocks from Mars sometimes get blasted into space by big cosmic collisions. Some of these rocks have ended up on Earth, carrying tiny microbes with them. So maybe, while we search for life on Mars, it could have been the red planet that started our very own life. Or maybe it wasn't Mars. Others suggest that life might have hitched a ride on comets from other star systems, traveling through space until they landed here. But if life did come from somewhere else, it just raises more questions. For example, how did life start in space in the first place? This is why scientists are a bit skeptical about this idea, which is called panspermia. In any case, the origins of life are a huge mystery, and we'll need decades of research to figure out the full answer.
Rikat structure is a giant formation in the Sahara that looks exactly like a giant bullseye. It's so wide that you can see it from space. Even the CIA got interested in it. In 1965, they planned a flyover looking for geomagnetic anomalies. The findings are still classified. Perhaps the theories are true, and this place is truly the lost city of Atlantis. Now, Atlantis supposedly sank beneath the waves, but recent discoveries are pointing us in a different direction. This is an ancient story that goes far back in time, and Plato was the first to mention it. The place had loads of greenery and a curious structure: 3 concentric circles of land surrounding 2 circles of water. 2 key quotes from Plato's writing suggest that Atlantis might not have been a typical island in the middle of the ocean. Plus, Atlantis had a major influence from Africa and Europe, challenging the idea of it being in the Atlantic. It turns out that the Eye of the Sahara and Atlantis look alike. When astronauts saw the Eye of Sahara from above, they initially suspected a meteorite impact crater, but the rings of the structure matched the layout described of Atlantis. More importantly, the Sahara wasn't always a desert. It turned from a tropical region into a desert around 11,000 years ago. Researchers found evidence of a massive river called the Tamaracet that could have sustained a community. This river flowed toward the Rikat structure, aligning with Plato's description. The Trans-Saharan Seaway ran through the Sahara 50 to 100 million years ago. The sea allegedly destroyed Atlantis around 11,500 years ago, likely due to a rapid rise in sea level caused by the end of the Ice Age. NASA's worldview imagery shows patterns consistent with this theory. Those concentric rings might be a key to unlocking the secrets of our planet's evolution over millions of years. They're shaped by erosion on resilient rock layers, creating a spooky pattern of ridges and troughs. The central peak stands proud at 1,300 feet. The central part has undergone a significant erosion makeover, revealing a circular structure with a raised peak. Unlike impact craters, the Eye of the Sahara flaunts a striking balance and symmetry. Some say it results from rock uplift, sculpted by wind and water. Others think it's an ancient anticline, eroded to reveal its concentric glory. Then there's a salt diapir theory, suggesting that salt's buoyancy sculpted this beauty. Dating techniques have proved that it formed 541 to 252 million years ago, give or take a million or two. Ancient tools are scattered around the outer rings of the structure near riverbeds. Some older stone tools have also been spotted in the same areas. And still, even though some spear points from the Neolithic period have been found, there aren't many signs that people were living there back then. The area seems to have been used for short-term activities like hunting and making tools. There are other unearthly mysteries that haunt our world. One such enigma is in Norway, the ominous Hessdalen light phenomenon, also known as the Valley of Lights, leaves scientists confused. This valley is 10 miles wide. It's quite isolated, but a peculiar blue box sits high on the hillside, equipped with cameras scanning the valley. The unsettling saga began in the 1980s, when the night sky over Hessdalen erupted with burning fireballs, a recurring spectacle that sent shivers down the spines of those who witnessed it. This wasn't a fleeting occurrence, rather it became a regular thing. Terrified locals reported encounters with these unexplained luminous phenomena, some of which happened near their homes. Unease spread like wildfire. At its peak, there were about 20 sightings every week. The phenomenon made its way into newspapers, magazines, and media worldwide. Soon, people flocked to the valley, hoping to see the lights themselves. In 1984, experts joined the fray, armed with sophisticated instruments like magnetometers, radiometers, and other ometers. What they encountered was mind-bending, lights that defied explanation. Some moved at a leisurely pace, while others raced through the sky at an astonishing 19,000 miles per hour. People tried to explain these lights: airplanes, distant reflections, ball lightning, satellites, planets, meteors. But the speed and how these lights danced ruled out all those theories. We're slowly approaching another mysterious place. This is the greatest subglacial lake among Antarctica's 675 known lakes. It can easily hide unknown life forms. This lake is beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. Dive about 2.5 miles under the ice, and there you'll see Lake Vostok, located at 1,600 feet below sea level. This lake is 155 miles long and 31 miles wide at its broadest point. With an average depth of 1,400 feet, it's also the world's sixth largest by volume. It's like an underwater city with lofty pillars and deep basins. The secret lake was discovered in 1993, yet it had been waiting to be found down there for over 2,000 years, collecting ancient secrets. In 2012, scientists drilled through the ice, creating the longest ice core ever. They pierced the ice all the way to the lake's surface. The year 2013 brought an unexpected twist when the tranquil waters erupted during the extraction of an ice core, mixing with drilling fluids. Then they got a pristine water sample in 2015. Some believe there might be previously unknown life forms down there, since it's a fossil water reserve that's been untouched for millions of years. That could be a lot like those speculated ice-covered oceans on moons like Europa and Enceladus. It all started with a theory in the 19th century, suggesting fresh water lurking under Antarctic ice sheets. Then, in 1955, seismic soundings hinted at a subglacial lake, and by the 90s, satellite data confirmed Lake Vostok's existence. Now, Lake Vostok isn't alone. In 2005, they found an island in the middle of the lake. Then, two smaller lakes joined the party. They suspect that a secret network of subglacial rivers might link these lakes. Now, very far away from Antarctica, in Venezuela, Catatumbo lightning presents a sinister light show at the junction of the Catatumbo River and Lake Maracaibo. This unsettling lightning phenomenon happens at about 140 to 160 nights a year, going on for 10 hours a day, and can flash up to 280 times in a single hour. The frequency of this lightning show changes with the seasons and from year to year. There was a break between January to March in 2010, causing a bit of worry that it might vanish forever. As the sun sets, winds from the east start picking up speed. The strong wind is called a nocturnal low-level jet, like what you see in the Great Plains of North America. These winds bring moisture, mostly from the Caribbean and the lake itself. This humid air hits high mountain ridges, causing thunderstorms to form over the mountains. Thanks to the ongoing wind situation, more thunderstorms appear as the night goes on. This pattern repeats itself, and is why this area has the highest annual lightning rate globally. The next place scientists cannot explain is in China. That is the Longyu Caves. They have lofty slanted roofs and sturdy pillars. The spot remained hidden for centuries. These human-made caverns, built around 2,000 years ago, decided to reveal themselves only in the 90s. Local farmers drained some ponds and unveiled 5 massive caverns. Further digging exposed an additional 19 smaller caves. They range from 60 to 110 feet in width and 26 to 50 feet in height. Archaeologists found historical relics from the reign of Emperor Zhuan of Han, dating back to over 2,000 years ago. Now, how did these caves survive for more than 2 millennia without falling apart? No ancient records explain the way they were crafted either. The walls show chisel marks, hinting at some layer-by-layer chiseling action, but the exact construction process is still a head-scratcher. You wake up, gasping for air, struggling to peel yourself from your bed. When you do manage to get your feet on the ground, it feels like they're glued down tight. You're twice as heavy. It feels like you're carrying another you on your shoulders all day long. Well, congratulations. You've woken up on an Earth where uncontrolled experiments with dark matter have doubled the force of gravity. Mass panic happens when over 8,000 aircraft fall as soon as the gravity spikes, crashing into buildings, forests, and oceans. And that's because airplanes suddenly lost the balance between the pull of gravity and the lift force necessary to keep them cruising. Pilots did attempt to save their planes, but GPS failed as satellites swiftly moved. After a month, humans begin to look more and more like chimps. Bones are getting thicker, and the immense force constantly pulling people down is squashing their spines, making everybody bend over. People start figuring out that walking ape-style on all fours helps with better balance and stability. And that becomes a big deal, since even tripping over a tiny rock could lead to a nasty fracture. Falls not only get more intense due to the extra forces on bones and joints, but they also happen faster. Gravity's pull doubles the acceleration force, increasing it from 32 feet per second to 64 feet per second. Your house is not a safe place anymore. Old buildings and bridges all over the world are now collapsing. Inside those still standing, residents get the scary feeling that the whole place is shaking, and cracks start showing up everywhere. It's dangerous to stay inside houses, as roofs are now twice their usual weight, and any rain or snow also feels twice as heavy. Car alarms are constantly going off because tree branches keep falling all over the place. Most trees simply can't bear the weight of gravity, and only strong and small plants survive, like cactuses and succulents. 6 months after the sudden change, supermarkets have a sinister vibe going on, with shelves nearly empty and people arguing over the last loaf of bread. You get frustrated to see that your favorite Japanese restaurant is now 5 times more expensive. And it's not just about salmon prices. It's rice that has become a rare luxury item, since the gravity boost has messed up the photosynthesis process, and the seeds are taking too long to grow. On the flip side, carrots are now cheaper than ever. They're sprouting and growing at lightning speed. People start eating so many carrots that human skin now has an orange glow from all that extra beta-carotene. Farmers are getting creative, using artificial supports to keep plants like tomatoes and corn on their feet. But even with all their efforts, it's hard to get a good harvest. Summer has arrived, and even your air conditioner can't relieve the unbearable heat. A sudden change in gravity disrupted Earth's orbit around the Sun, pushing it into a new, tighter elliptical path. Earth now passes much closer to the Sun than it used to, making your sunscreen simply surrender. The Moon's orbit has also had some dramatic changes, leading to more dangerous and extreme tide patterns. High tides are now higher and low tides are lower. This shift has also triggered widespread volcanic eruptions and earthquakes on an unprecedented scale. Earth's crust starts to rupture across vast areas, unleashing planet-wide lava flows so intense that living on Venus begins to sound like a pretty good idea. 5 years later, people notice that puppies are begging for food twice as much, but they are taking more time to grow. Breeds like beagles look thinner and their leg bones are getting heavier. Even insects, such as locusts, now have thicker hind legs to keep those jumps going. Sea creatures are being crushed by the much greater weight of the water around them. That's not a big deal for animals used to deep ocean pressures, like the anglerfish, but crabs and lobsters are really struggling since they live in shallow waters. Sloths and monkeys develop a stronger grip so they won't fall off trees. For carnivorous animals living in jungles or savannas, life is a real challenge because any animal the size of a wolf or bigger can't run without breaking a leg. Large predators like lionesses are starving because they can't move fast enough to catch their prey. Tall trees like palms and pines also go through evolutionary changes. They get beefier trunks and only grow about half as tall as usual. This way, water and nutrients can travel from the ground up to their leaves without struggling against gravity so badly. 10 years have passed since gravity increased. Airlines have finally made changes to prevent commercial flights from nosediving. The wings of airplanes are now longer. Pilots have learned to fly at altitudes twice as high, and flight speed has increased by 41%. To avoid people getting extremely nauseated and dizzy during takeoffs and landings, seats are now fully horizontal, like first-class bed-like setups, specially designed to minimize the nasty effects of gravity times 2. Flight attendants are trained to raise the seat at the passenger's feet after they pass out, so that blood can return to their head. The thing is, when gravity gets a power boost, it yanks your blood down to your feet and hands even more than usual, making your heart work extra hard to pump that blood around, especially to your head. 50 years have passed. Women in their 30s look like they are 60. Higher gravity decreases collagen synthesis, so even though they're still young, they're dealing with more wrinkles and fine lines, and their skin has already lost a big part of its elasticity. Wounds as small as a pimple pop or a paper cut also take much more time to heal. So people are excited about the creation of a Band-Aid made from fish skin from cod or tilapia that promotes local blood circulation and speeds up the healing process. People have also got used to wear exoskeletons made of titanium, which support and enhance the wearer's strength. This technology features cool joints at the places that copy humans' natural movements, giving people more flexibility and letting them move around more easily. Prototypes of personal flying devices start popping up after 100 years. The Gray Flyer is like a jetpack made of carbon nanotubes, making the structure strong without adding much weight. Instead of using fuel for propulsion, the device has these super-thin but high-tech solar panels. Investors are still not sure if humans could fly long distances with it, but the Gray Flyer definitely can help people tackle tasks that have become almost impossible, like climbing a mountain or grabbing something from the attic. Things at the gym are pretty different too. The anti-gravity treadmill is a favorite among fitness enthusiasts because it uses air pressure to lift users, reducing the discomfort of gravity while running. People can also lift weights in booths when the gravity settings are customized. When training with G-force set at 3 or 4 times the new normal, muscles get stronger, making double gravity seem more bearable. However, the maximum set is 4.6, otherwise bones might crack. Over 500 years have passed. Thanks to these amazing technological creations, humans can now handle and establish colonies in other parts of the universe. A popular choice for family vacations is Kepler 452b, a planet about 60% larger than Earth, orbiting in the habitable zone of a sun-like star. Kids especially like that place, as oceans have been discovered and hotels have been built near rocky beaches. On the other hand, traveling to places in the universe with lighter gravity is like going to an oasis of tranquility. So Mars and the Moon have become known for amazing yoga retreats. With their gravitational forces much weaker, people can breathe more easily there and move around with more freedom. Keep in mind that these trips are expensive, so you might want to start saving up now.
In December 2014, an entire district in Budapest got covered with ice crystals. The trees in the area couldn't handle the pressure from the ice and they started toppling over. It was a spooky occurrence called ice fog. When it happens, the temperature drops significantly, freezing everything around, like Dementors did in the Harry Potter movies. All thanks to a temperature flip-flop. It not only messes with what you can see, but also creates ghostly pillars and halos that glow in the dark. Ice fog is made up of tiny ice crystals. When it's below 14 degrees Fahrenheit, water droplets in the air freeze and turn into ice crystals. Until then, they stay liquid unless they find something to freeze onto. Ice fog usually forms in chilly parts of the world, like the Arctic or Antarctic. Budapest was a plot twist. Hot, moist gases from vehicles and planes can also create ice fog. One plane takes off on a cold day and boom! There's so much ice fog that the next plane can't see a thing. That sometimes happens. It's not the same as diamond dust, which is when sparse ice crystals fall from a clear sky. It forms when the humidity is super high, nearly 100%, and the air temperature drops way below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. This creates ice crystals in the air, and they end up settling on different surfaces. Interestingly, early settlers thought these ice crystals could get into their lungs and cause some trouble. There are many other interesting ice formations, such as rabbit ice. It occurs when the air is chilly but the ground is yet to embrace the frosty vibes. The sap inside plant stems expands as it freezes, making the stems crack open. Once it happens, liquid slips out, meets the frosty air, and turns into thin layers of ice, creating beautiful petal or ribbon-like formations. Earthquake lights are another weird and unique phenomenon. When a powerful magnitude 8.1 earthquake hit Mexico in 2017, images of strange green and blue lights in the sky flooded social media. These so-called Mexico earthquake lights added another layer of mystery. Similar to ball lightning, earthquake lights are pretty rare. Fascinating, but tough for scientists to figure out. What makes it tricky is that the instances of luminosity around earthquakes don't all look the same. There are both theories and myths about this thing. The lights can appear in many different shapes, forms, and colors. Digging into history, researchers examined 65 accounts of these lights dating back to 1600 CE. For instance, on November 12, 1988, people reported a bright purple-pink globe of light along the St. Lawrence River in Quebec, just 11 days before a powerful quake. In Pisco, Peru, the lights took the form of bright flashes captured on security cameras before an 8.0 magnitude earthquake in 2007. And before a 2009 earthquake in L'Aquila, Italy, folks saw 4-inch flames of light flickering above a stone street. Yet, there are still debates about whether earthquake lights are real or not. The U.S. Geological Survey is a bit cautious, not sure whether individual reports of unusual lighting around the time and place of an earthquake truly represent earthquake lights. In one study, scientists theorized that these lights were caused by electric charges activated in specific types of rocks during seismic activity, like turning on a battery in Earth's crust. Some rocks, such as basalt and gabbro, have tiny crystal defects. They might release electrical charges into the air. Researchers estimated that the conditions needed for the creation of these lights existed in less than 0.5% of earthquakes worldwide. It could explain their rarity. They also noted that the lights tend to show up more often before or during quakes than afterward. An earlier study suggested that tectonic stress could create a piezoelectric effect where quartz-bearing rocks produce strong electric fields when compressed. Yet, studying earthquake lights is tough because they're unpredictable and short-lived. Time to talk about a sudden ring around the moon or sun. You're walking with a friend and suddenly see this sun halo. It's nature's warning. A snow or rainstorm is coming. These halos form when bazillions of tiny ice crystals in clouds refract sunlight. Resist the temptation to stare at this wonder directly. It can damage your eyes. grab sunglasses, and then admire it for about 40 minutes. Nature sends other early warnings too. If the sea mysteriously recedes, showing coral and fish, a tsunami might be on the way. Watch out for rip currents on the beach. Sharks might be fleeing a storm if they come unusually close. Feeling your hair stand on end and jewelry buzzing? Lightning might strike nearby. Seek shelter. Avalanches, green storms, and lakes near volcanoes are all potential dangers. Cross seas are extremely dangerous. Cave exploration during a full moon might cost you your life. If the ocean turns reddish-brown, avoid swimming. There might be toxic algae in the water. Animals sense disasters too. If they act strangely, pay attention. There's a fascinating blue glow around Matsu Islands on summer nights. It's caused by tiny glowing creatures. Tourists love watching this beautiful spectacle, but there's a downside. It's toxic and getting bigger each year, as revealed by a study. Despite its romantic appearance, this phenomenon is harmful. A team of oceanographers used satellite data to track its growth over 19 years. After analyzing almost 1,000 satellite images, they concluded that it was expanding into deeper waters. Unfortunately, this expansion poses a threat to marine life. The bloom of blue tears can poison fish and sea turtles and even affect human health. While dinoflagellates themselves aren't toxic, their food, toxic algae, releases harmful chemicals into the water. This process depletes oxygen, endangering marine animals. The main cause is unclear, but pollution from agriculture down the Yangtze River seems to play a crucial role. Agricultural runoff introduces nutrients that fuel the bloom. During the construction of the Three Gorges Dam project, the bloom's size reduced when the river's flow decreased. After the dam was finished and the river started flowing strongly again, the bloom resumed its growth. The team predicts that blue tears will keep expanding, posing an ongoing threat to marine life and creating more vividly glowing waters. A katabatic wind or drainage wind happens when dense cold air descends from a higher elevation down a slope due to gravity. These winds can be powerful, sometimes reaching hurricane speeds, but rarely. Unlike all downslope winds, katabatic winds like the Bora in the Adriatic or Santa Ana in California originate from cooling air on elevated surfaces like plateaus or mountains. As the air descends, it warms up. Its temperature depends on the source region. In Antarctica, katabatic winds are crucial in shaping wind fields. In regions such as Greenland and Antarctica, these winds can become extremely intense, reaching hurricane force. They contribute to unique phenomena, such as the McMurdo Dry Valleys in Antarctica, and are associated with such dangers as willowaws in the Fuegian Archipelago and Alaska. St. Elmo's Fire is a natural phenomenon worth mentioning. It happens during thunderstorms or volcanic eruptions when there's a strong electric field around the area. It creates a bluish or violet glow around such things as ship masts, airplane edges, or sharp objects. This glow is caused by ionized air molecules and is more noticeable in low light conditions. The glow is a form of plasma, and it happens when the electric field around an object causes the ionization of air molecules. This can occur during thunderstorms because there are high voltage differences between clouds and the ground. Sharp points make it easier for St. Elmo's Fire to occur because the electric field is more concentrated in those areas. The colors you see, blue or violet, come from the fluorescence of nitrogen and oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. Similar to how neon lights work, but with different gases. From ancient Greece to 15th century China, this phenomenon has been seen throughout history. When lightning flashes across the sky, it releases somewhere around 300 million volts, or the equivalent to power 25 million car batteries. Some say you're more likely to be zapped by lightning in your lifetime than to win the lottery. And statistics seem to prove this urban myth, as each year around 28 US locals do get electrically charged from the sky. The world's infrastructure can be affected by lightning too. That's because it generally seeks out the tallest structure around. But in certain conditions, it can also strike an open field. So scientists came together and invented a laser lightning rod that might help. This unique invention might make lightning strikes a bit more manageable, since it can guard a much larger area than the traditional one, and it's flexible. Classic lightning rods work like magnets for that powerful electrical charge. There are these tall metal devices placed on top of buildings. When a storm approaches, the rod provides an easy path for lightning to follow, preventing it from hitting other parts of the structure. The rod is also connected to the ground with a conductor, like a wire, helping the electrical charge to safely make its way into the earth. This process protects the building and the humans in it by directing the electrical energy away. We've been using lightning rods for the last 300 years, courtesy of Benjamin Franklin. But they're not damage-proof. When it comes to safeguarding vast spaces like airports, they can't manage. That's because they can only cover an area proportional to their height. Here's where this new, improved lightning rod can help. When the laser zaps the sky, it leaves behind a trail of superheated air called plasma. The same way a sculptor carves out traces in clay, the laser creates channels in the air. These channels then become the lightning's new favorite route, guiding it down to the ground. This new method was tested in the Swiss Alps back in 2021, and the results were promising. These lasers do have their own disadvantages. They aren't always available and need a heads up. That's because they have to be activated before a bolt hits. If you're a second too late, tough luck. Also, once the laser stops, the air loses its conductivity pretty quickly. This means the laser rod might not have enough power to guide the lightning safely. A potential solution might be monitoring the electric field around a certain area, predicting where lightning might strike. Yet, these new rods still need more testing and lots of funds. The European Space Agency found another way to make lasers useful: to turn moon dust into roads. It would make our future lunar exploration missions much easier if a laser beam could do the hard jobs, allowing astronauts to drive around the moon. This discovery might also help with another tricky issue: moon dust clinging to everything in sight. Roads on the moon might seem too much of a hustle for now, since we haven't been to our satellite since 1972. But when future space explorers will touch down again, they don't just plan to walk small distances. It'll be nice to have them driving around so they can explore larger areas. Problem is, that pesky moon dust is very fine, abrasive, and sticky. Back during the Apollo missions, it clogged up equipment, eroded spacesuits, and even caused a lunar rover to overheat. That's why scientists want to zap simulated moon dirt with a laser. This laser-powered project used a 12-kilowatt laser to melt simulated moon dirt into a solid, glassy surface, perfect for moon roads. The plan isn't to send a huge laser on the moon. This device they're testing here on Earth is like a stand-in for the sun, mimicking what lunar sunlight could do. The idea is to eventually concentrate sunlight using a big lens on the moon's surface. Some experiments have been done so far with different laser sizes, finding that a bigger beam made the whole process go smoother. Instead of dealing with tiny molten balls, they got a stable layer of molten moon dirt that's easier to work with. What they got was a glassy, somewhat brittle material that can handle downward forces. And even if it cracks, it's fixable. The laser beam was used to make triangle-shaped road parts that fit together like puzzle pieces, forming solid surfaces across lunar soil. If this goes as planned, we'll have moon roads made of interlocked triangles. This unique type of moon pavement could be the solution for landing pads too. Lasers can help piece together information on long-lost civilizations too. Discovering Maya cities has always been difficult for researchers exploring Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. For years, experts believed no early civilization could have thrived in that harsh environment. But advancements like light mapping technology and laser scans are showing us this might not be true. LiDAR technology can lend a helping hand for archaeologists, especially in areas that are hard to physically reach. That's because it's like we're equipping computers with a pair of eyes. The whole thing works as a flashlight, sending out small light beams in the form of a pulsated laser. These beams bounce off objects like trees and buildings and come back to the flashlight. LiDAR measures how long it takes for the light to return, creating a map of the surroundings. When a self-driving car or robot wants to know where it is, it uses LiDAR to send out these light beams. By figuring out how long they take to come back and where they hit, the car or robot can understand what's around it, making it safer for them to move around through the fog or at nighttime without bumping into things. With this technology, a team uncovered the massive Maya city of Akomtun. LiDAR technology helped researchers to map the jungle floor, revealing hidden structures. Yet someone still needed to verify these findings on foot. The journey to Akomtun wasn't extremely challenging. The region, quite far from the nearest airport, is mostly unexplored, accessible only through old hunting and logging routes. The dense terrain made the trek challenging, taking the team up to 2 weeks to cover just 30 miles. But the effort paid off, revealing monumental structures like a large acropolis and intriguing shapes hinting at a marketplace or cultural center. LiDAR is also used in rovers we'll need to explore other planets. This will allow the robots we send up there to navigate their surroundings without direct human indications. It's also helped us better understand the best location to place solar panels, making it cheaper and faster for us to meet our energy needs. We might also be able to use lasers to predict how a volcano is gonna act. These structures are loaded with magma, the molten rock sneaking upwards from the Earth's insides. When a volcano blows its top, a chemical reaction happens, transforming magma into what we call lava. The specialists behind this new use of lasers think of magma as the computer code of volcanoes. It reveals information on how a volcano might pop up. That's because not all eruptions bring lava, and even if they do, there are different lava types, depending on how runny it is. Magma is like a mix of liquid, gas, and crystals that are shaken up inside the volcano. There are many elements at play before a volcanic eruption, so it's hard to study and understand that complex chemistry. To organize things around a bit, scientists hit the cooled magma, the rock matrix, with a laser, just like the ones you might have encountered if you've ever had eye surgery. It makes the chemical components easier to study. This latest laser eye method was used on samples from a 2021 eruption, which lasted 85 days. It covered over 4 square miles, spewing loads of lava that wrecked over 1,000 homes and displaced over 7,000 people. To prevent such events from happening again, scientists need more data. It's true, earthquakes and ground shifts help specialists predict what a volcano might do, but knowing a bit more about its chemistry can help a bit more.
People in the U.S. consume around 100 acres of pizza every day, which is almost the size of Vatican City. Also, they drink 146 billion cups of coffee a year. Now, with that amount of coffee, you could fill an average-sized lake in approximately 10 years. But you couldn't fill Lake Superior because it has enough water to cover the whole U.S. with 1 foot of liquid. Now, people in the U.S. generally don't live in rural states like Wyoming, and because of that, more people live in New York than in 39 out of 50 states of the U.S. At the same time, Wyoming is the 10th largest state in the U.S. It's bigger than the U.K., but it's also the least populated state. You could drive through it for hours without seeing a single person. And because there's no strangers around, locals don't even lock their doors. Also, the whole state only has 2 escalators. Count them. Nestled within Wyoming's borders is iconic Yellowstone, the country's first national park. Now, living in Wyoming can be likened to playing a game on hard mode. It's one of the windiest and coldest states. The weather is genuinely wild, and it's not for everyone. There are also positive things about Wyoming, like its affordable stay and endless outdoor activities. It has a population of 576,000 people. That number of inhabitants could fill a small city. But everything you love about the outdoors can be found here, and that's why people choose this state. Vermont is the muddiest state in the U.S. It even has its own Loch Ness Monster. In the 17th century, European cartographer Samuel de Champlain reported seeing a 20-foot monster in Lake Champlain, named after him, that was as thick as a barrel and had a head like a horse. And since then, many more people have allegedly seen this creature. Vermont is an excellent state with tons of natural beauty. It's the perfect place for starting a farm. The state has a population of a little over 500,000 people. There are more folks in a few blocks in New York than the entire state of Vermont. It's a rural place, not ideal for building huge cities. But if you love farms and maple syrup, then Vermont is a haven for you. It produced over 2 million gallons of maple syrup in 2003. Vermont is also very cold, so people have invented snow golf. They would paint golf balls red and play in the winter on hard, icy snow. Now let's talk about the largest state in America, Alaska, the last frontier. This state is so big that it could fit 19 other states. But when it comes to population, Alaska could be doing a bit better. It has stunning natural beauty, like huge forests and lakes. At the same time, there's a lot of wildlife, which can sometimes be frustrating. Imagine sitting in your garden and getting visited by a grizzly bear or a wolf. Part of the problem is that the cities are too far apart. It's at least a 6-hour drive from one city to another. Still, if you love the outdoors, Alaska is the place for you. Plus, you get paid to live there. But there is a problem. As we all know, Alaska is not connected to the rest of the U.S., so most goods have to travel a long way, meaning everything is quite expensive there. And one of the biggest reasons people don't like living there is that it's freezing. You must shovel tons of snow just to get outside and do simple tasks. Around 700,000 people live in Alaska year-round. And if you ask them, they'll probably tell you that they like it there because there aren't many people around. When you think of South Dakota, the first thing that comes to mind is Mount Rushmore, and that is basically it. The state has a population of a little under 1 million and is practically empty. It has harsh weather and it's pretty far from everything. But the people of South Dakota are super friendly. If you go there, you'll feel welcome. Also, as with many other states, the beauty of nature might surprise you. North Dakota is similar to South Dakota, but a little more challenging than South Dakota. The state has tough winters, hot and humid summers, and no big cities. And if that wasn't enough, it also has a lot of floods. When people hear about this, they usually stay away, despite Dakota being a beautiful state. It has a population of 780,000 people, making it the 4th least populated state in the U.S. When settlers were moving there, only a tiny number of people remained in the end. Many moved to Canada, where farmland is better thanks to better weather and more fertile soil. North Dakota has some unique benefits, like low cost of living and low unemployment rates. And if you are a nature lover, you won't be disappointed. It has 13 state parks and 3 national parks, all with fantastic scenery. Delaware is a small state with an even smaller population. The biggest city in Delaware is Wilmington, which has a population of 70,500 people. As for the whole state, it has around 1,031,890 people. It also has 2 million corporations, but no big cities. You may wonder about the reason. Well, they don't pay income taxes there, and those corporations are not actually located in Delaware, meaning that the local people there really don't benefit from them. The state is prone to storms. Philadelphia, which is close to Delaware, has fewer storms and is closer to major cities, so corporations simply move there. Most people who live in Delaware are retired. They don't need jobs, but love the fantastic beaches this state offers. Hey there, cowboy! We're going on a horse ride to the most beautiful state with teeming wildlife, which houses one of the best national parks, Glacier. Of course, I'm talking about Montana. This state has a little over 1 million people and is bigger than Japan in territory. But Japan has around 111 times more people than Montana. Why? Well, most people don't want to be cowboys. Generally speaking, people tend to like living in big cities, which Montana doesn't have. Plus, Montana has tough winters and expensive houses. And people don't like being cold. That's why Florida has so many people. Rhode Island has a population of a bit over 1 million, making it the 8th smallest state in the USA. Rhode Island is a small, flat coastal state. If you climb on a chair, you might see the whole state. Just kidding, you can't do that. By territory, it's the smallest state in the U.S., but it's densely packed with people. At the same time, the inhabitants of this state are gradually leaving it. The cost of living there is high, so they would rather go somewhere more affordable. Now let's say you're from Canada. In this case, if you accidentally teleported to Maine, you wouldn't even notice it, because the landscape would look almost the same. Maine has beautiful lakes, mountains, dense pine trees, and many moose. If you see one, stay away. Maine is truly a beautiful state, but it has a small population of around 1,300,000 people. Maine has terrible winters, so almost everyone lives near the coast or as far south as possible to escape crazy snowstorms that are common here. Because of this, 89% of Maine is covered with forests. This is one of the reasons why there aren't many industries here. Portland is the biggest and most beautiful city in this state, but only around 38% of the population lives in cities. Most inhabitants of the state are avid outdoor lovers. Now, get this. Octopuses are visitors from outer space. Here's how this would have happened. Ice kept eggs of octopuses stuck in spatial bodies crashed into Earth. Then these guys would have mixed together with a pre-existing set of genetic information available on our planet. And presto, octopuses were born. Well, it may be a long stretch to justify that the highly intelligent octopuses are extraterrestrial beings. But the idea is based on a theory that has been around since ancient Greece, something known as panspermia. Now, panspermia is a hypothesis that says life exists all around the universe, not only in planets. So, things such as space dust, asteroids, and even spacecraft have their share of life glued to them. And when they travel across the galaxy, life is disseminated. This strand of thought has been polemic, since it goes against the idea that all life originated right here on our planet. But as much as this new octopus theory might be refreshing, it doesn't contribute too substantially to the search for life on other planets. It's just too hypothetical. Now, octopuses are in fact incredibly old. The oldest known fossil belongs to an animal that lived almost 300 million years ago. FYI, this is before our dinosaur buddies roamed the Earth. Wait, there's more! Octopus arms have a mind of their own. That's because 2/3 of their neurons lie in their arms, not in their heads. This means that their arms can problem-solve how to open a shellfish, while their owner is worried about other stuff entirely. Talk about ninja-level multitasking. Oh, and like other animals, such as chimpanzees and dolphins, octopuses have proven to be good at maneuvering tools, like picking up old shells and using them as a temporary home. Now, of course, the most intelligent animals on our planet are humans, according to humans. But we don't seem to give pigs enough credit. Pigs are so smart they can play video games. No, not Minecraft. But in a recent academic study, scientists had 4 pigs play a joystick game. They had to manipulate the stick so that the moving ball would hit the wall and then they would get a treat. All 4 pigs did great in the test, which was surprising even to the scientists. Now, pigeons also aced an impressive test. They were trained to differentiate a Picasso painting from a Monet one, which they had no trouble learning. Then they were able to apply this knowledge, identifying works of art they had not previously seen, meaning they really understood the difference between each painter. Poor things are always seen as a nuisance. Now, if we placed kangaroos in an Animal's Most Amazing Ability contest, they'd win. It's mainly because they break the 4-legged rule. A special species of kangaroo, the red kangaroo, uses its tail to help propel it forward. Now visually it has 4 limbs, but in practice it uses 5. They're biologically built to use their tail as a 5th limb, since it's packed with articulated vertebrae and thick muscles. Of course, it had to be an Australian animal. Okay, jokes aside, Australia is home to a variety of unique animals, like the most venomous snake in the world. This not-so-cute reptile is known as the inland taipan, and its venom is enough to take down 100 humans. And still, on the topic of dangerous animals, the island is also home to one of the world's most venomous spiders, the funnel web spider, which can be found not too far away from downtown Sydney. Yikes! The Little Mermaid may have shown us that life is good under the sea, but she didn't mention anything about the bizarre ways of the anglerfish. Anglerfish are those special types of fish that have a huge whip nose connected to the front part of their bodies. They look like they're forever holding a lantern in front of them, except that the little lantern they carry is a type of bioluminescence, and is far from romantic, as anglerfish use it to lure smaller fish in as their meals. It was back in 1999 that scientists discovered that these little guys spend most of their lives upside down. They had never seen anything like that. Hovering above the Pacific Ocean floor at a depth of around 16,400 feet, where light almost doesn't even reach, there they were. They do this because since they live so close to the seafloor, their built-in lantern illuminates the ground in search of food. They might be weird, but they're also pretty clever. Recently, scientists have discovered a species of animal that has neither a brain nor a head and is pretty smart. Meet the brittle star. This 5-armed creature is a bundle of nerves, and it has proved itself to be super clever. In a recent experiment, scientists would dim the light while they fed brittle stars their favorite treat, yummy shrimps. After 10 months of conditioning, these babies would creep out of hiding as soon as the scientists turned off the light in the room they were in. Surely they were expecting to enjoy a delicious meal. Now, we really shouldn't judge a brain by its size, or lack of brain in this case. There's something known as the orange cat behavior, and apparently it's not just a meme. So far, scientists have been able to understand that coat color is connected to a feline's gender. And since orange is an X chromosome, orange cats are usually males, like Garfield. The so-called orange cat behavior describes ginger cats as agents of chaos. Again, pretty much like Garfield. However, there haven't been any conclusive studies on whether coat color and cat behavior are truly linked. In terms of vision, mantis shrimps probably have the most psychedelic vision out of all animals. These funny-looking creatures have a whopping 16 varieties of photoreceptors, with 5 of them reserved for the ultraviolet or UV spectrum. Ultraviolet rays are really short wavelengths, which are invisible to humans. The thing science still doesn't understand is how exactly these mantis shrimp view the world around them. Sure, they can perceive a bunch of colors, but they can't necessarily distinguish all of these colors among themselves. It can be that they just see a lot of really vivid, really blurry colors, but we haven't figured out a way to check that out. Now, to say sloths are cute is an understatement. They may be one of the friendliest animals in the jungle, but there's more. If you look closely at their fur coat, you'll notice hints of green. These greeneries are actually tiny little algae that grow alongside sloths. They help sloths to camouflage better in the jungle, but they also nurture them. The little cracks inside a sloth's fur create the perfect environment for algae reproduction, and scientists have found species of algae that don't exist anywhere else in the world. They do get by with a little help from their friends. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey. Now meet this guy. Unlike what its name might suggest, the red panda is closer to a raccoon than it is to a giant panda. You'll find a lot of these cat-sized creatures in the Himalayan region, hopping from tree to tree and bundled together trying to keep warm in the harsh weather. They're gentle and friendly like their big panda cousins, and occasionally enjoy eating some bamboo sticks. And then there are bees. Compared to humans, bees' brains are the size of pinheads, yet they are capable of astounding things. Let's say a bee is running low on energy after a long search flight. This bee desperately needs a drop of honey in order to continue flying, but smartly enough, she doesn't need to go back to the hive to recharge. She can ask a fellow beehive mate for a drop of honey directly from this other bee's stomach and continue flying. This type of decentralized system allows them to build highly effective societies, one that bees don't need to push to the queues in front of the honey cells, for example. Hey, just kidding. Hey, it's possible that Jurassic World is not just a fantasy. Dinosaurs could really be walking, swimming, or flying around somewhere out there, but not on Earth. Some scientists think there may be planets far, far away from our solar system where slightly different versions of T-Rex and other dinosaurs live. They got the idea based on the fact that our planet used to have about 30% higher oxygen levels than today. That's why complex and intelligent life forms like dinosaurs could develop in the first place. They also want to explore basic building blocks that are the reason why we have life on Earth. These building blocks are something we know as amino acids. They make proteins, sugars, and genetic material, RNA and DNA. They're consistent and mainly exist in one shape or orientation. There are two ways they can be oriented, right and left. That means they mirror each other, just like our hands. It's something we call chirality. For life to exist, proteins must have one form, which means they can be oriented right or left. On our home planet, almost all living things, from the smallest bugs to whales and elephants, have amino acids with a left-handed orientation. We're not exactly sure why things are set that way, but there's a theory that's because of meteorites that crash-landed on Earth 4 billion years ago. They brought specific kinds of amino acids and some other organic materials to our planet, and somehow set the pattern we have today. Maybe we could use special telescopes we created to search planets, especially those where conditions are similar to how they used to be on Earth back in time when dinosaurs existed. In that case, it would be better to watch them from a safe distance, because considering what they might look like, researchers say it might be a safer choice. That's a cool idea, but it's still very tricky. The history of life on our planet, especially that of dinosaurs, involved many catastrophic events and mass extinctions. There's always more room for new theories about dinosaurs. One of them says oil comes from dinosaurs. Interesting, but not true. Oil formed from the remains of sea animals and plants from millions of years ago. This was way before dinosaurs appeared. Tiny organisms ended up at the bottom of the sea. As bacteria decomposed animals and plants, they removed most of the oxygen and some other elements from them. It left behind only a sludge, which was mostly made of hydrogen and carbon. As time passed, those remains became covered with many layers of silt and sand. When the depth of the sediment increased to 10,000 feet or even more, heat and pressure turned the remains into natural gas and crude oil. It's possible that dinosaurs lived or fell in the sea and later became petroleum in the same manner. But no one has ever found crude oil containing their skeletons. So this is just an unproven theory. Then there's the feathered dinosaur theory, which, unlike the previous one, seems to have more foothold in reality. Back in 2010, researchers found evidence that 100 million years ago, there had been a dino species with ginger feathers. Another group of scientists claimed there had been a different species from 150 million years ago. Those dinos had freckles and reddish-brown feathers on the tops of their heads. The color patterns probably had their purpose. Maybe it was a way to communicate with other representatives of their species or to attract mates. But years later, scientists studied the Microraptor, also called a feathered dinosaur. They realized it had probably been more like a bird than a dinosaur. The key point is how birds replace their feathers. Birds that fly have to replace their feathers in a specific order, otherwise they won't be able to fly very well. And the Microraptor's fossils showed that this creature had changed its feathers in a similar pattern. So they're not really sure which category this animal falls into. Dinosaurs that had feathers shed a lot of their skin piece by piece, like dandruff. Hey Bob, looking a little flaky there. Need a new shampoo? Yeah, they didn't shed their skins like lizards do, as if they take off an old suit. When we talk about dinosaurs, we usually don't picture them as social creatures, more like isolated ones similar to lizards. But some researchers discovered an 80-million-year-old collection of clutches in the Gobi Desert. It means there were colonies of dinosaurs that protected their nests and guarded their young, similar to birds. Crocodiles are known for doing that too. Pterosaurs were flying dinosaurs, and pelycosaurs were fin-backed ones. Some studies have shown that these two species used their exaggerated head crests and sails or fins to get to their potential partners. There are many theories about their crests and what they were needed for, though. Some experts believe that was how dinosaurs regulated their temperature. Others think they needed a crest to steer through the air. It's hard to say anything for sure since their fossils are rare and they don't have living descendants. But the most likely option is that the crest had the same purpose as a peacock's tail and was used for selecting mates. The bigger the crest, the more chances a pterosaur had to get a partner. You know theropods, those scary meat-eating predators that are shown in most dinosaur movies? Well, they might have enjoyed eating plants way more than tearing flesh. Not all of them, but it's possible that many of them weren't as fierce as we might think. Those big scary ones, like T-Rex, could be exceptions rather than the rule. The thing is, movies show these creatures to be way faster than they probably were in reality. They could probably run just a little bit more quickly than the average human runner. Scientists study the diet of coelurosaurs. Those seem to be the closest relative to birds. It was hard to figure it out because some of the dinos from this group had peg-like teeth, or in some cases, no teeth at all. To understand what they ate, researchers had to look for direct evidence and check if there was anything in their stomachs. And after they discovered certain things, including a beak with no teeth, they realized these fellas had followed a vegetarian diet most of the time. Even some famous ones, such as velociraptors, could be just innocent plant eaters and not terrifying beasts from Jurassic Park and our childhood nightmares. Over 10 years ago, scientists found fossils of a small dinosaur. It was a creature as big as a parrot with long legs. It came from a family with some of the most famous predators we know about, such as T-Rex and Velociraptor. Most dinosaurs that lived on land had 5 fingers, but later some of them ended up with fewer fingers. This new one they discovered was special because instead of having 3 fingers, which was more common for its family, it had just 1 finger with a sharp curved nail at the end of each front limb. This creature probably used this 1 finger to dig into insects' nests to feast. Even though we know all about the asteroid that wiped out dinosaurs, some have other theories. One paleontologist even had an idea that dinosaurs had possibly reached their end because they had been eating one another. This especially worked for ancestors of fierce, scary predators such as the Tyrannosaurus rex. It's possible they ate so many eggs of other dinosaurs that many species just went extinct. Once they started eating the eggs of very big dinos that we know as sauropods, it's possible they started getting bigger too. And no dinosaur mother could stop them from eating her eggs because she couldn't be around all the time. There were other big predatory animals that ate eggs, even early mammals. But in any case, later research showed dinosaurs couldn't have eaten enough eggs to have caused mass extinction. And that's all I have to say about that. If you take a bird's-eye view of the U.S., you might spot some creepy barcode-like symbols etched into the pavement. Well, don't worry. They're not surveillance QR codes or ancient artifacts. Back in the 20th century, these symbols were used to calibrate aerial and satellite cameras. Up close, you'll see that they were made using black or white paint on concrete or asphalt. They're usually smaller than a basketball court and have a bunch of organized bar-shaped lines. Planes and satellites use them to fine-tune their imaging equipment. It's like an eye chart for cameras, determining their optical resolution limits. Nowadays, we don't need these targets anymore, since our technology has advanced. So these giant barcodes have become pretty much useless. But you can still find dozens of them scattered across the U.S., including the Nevada test site, Fort Huachuca in Arizona, Travis Air Force Base in California, and in other parts of the world too. Still, size does not always matter when it comes to seeing something creepy from the sky. Take phytoplankton, for example. These teeny tiny bacteria may seem insignificant, but when they team up, they create a mind-blowing watercolor masterpiece that can be seen all the way from space. Up close, you can't even see these little tiny plants. But thanks to NASA's satellite images, we can witness the massive blooms they form. It looks as if they're taking over the ocean. Such phytoplankton blooms are like explosive growth spurts for these plants, happening in a jiffy. Luckily, satellites keep an eye on their expansion and make sure they aren't causing any trouble for our environment. Anyways, you don't need to go up into the sky to look at some creepy stuff. Take these spooky lights in Marfa, a super cute art town in West Texas. These ghostly Marfa lights show up at night near Highway 67 in the desert. They're distant glowing spots of different colors that pulse and flicker, getting brighter and then fading away. Plus, they zoom around, flying above desert plants like they've got places to be. Some folks say it's just car headlights, ranch lights, campfires, or some weird reflections in the atmosphere. But the people who have actually seen them swear these lights are like nothing they've ever witnessed before. These ghost lights have been spooking folks since the late 1800s, when early settlers chased after them in the dark, only to come up empty-handed. The city of Roswell in New Mexico is famous for paranormal things and secrets. Back in 1947, there was this dude and his son chilling on their ranch when they stumbled upon some weird metallic debris that was super light. They took a few pieces of the wreckage to the Roswell sheriff, who then got in touch with Colonel Blanchard, the big shot in charge of the Roswell Army Airfield Composite Group. As they were trying to figure out what the heck that wreckage was, an intelligence officer went ahead and publicly announced that Roswell Army Airfield had actually gotten their hands on a flying saucer. Still, a few decades later, the U.S. Air Force released a report saying that the wreckage was nothing more than a test balloon. In the Manistash Ridge of Washington, there's this crazy hole on the property of a man who identified himself as Mel Waters. People say it's not just an ordinary hole, but a gateway to another dimension. Now, for years, Mel and his neighbors used this hole as their personal trash can. I mean, they chucked everything in there, from regular old garbage to busted appliances. The hole never filled up, no matter how much junk they tossed in. But this bottomless pit also had some spooky stuff going on. Radios would pick up weird signals, and even dogs didn't want to go near this hole. Waters claimed that sometimes a mysterious black beam would shoot out from the hole, and portable radios would start playing tunes from the past. Now, by the way, Mel tried to measure this hole, and it turned out to be deeper than 80,000 feet, and he didn't even reach the bottom. Sometime later, the authorities asked Mr. Waters to lease them his property, but the hole disappeared into thin air. To this day, nobody has been able to find this mind-bending, mysterious hole. Another paranormal place on our list is called Skinwalker Ranch in Uinta County, Utah. This 512-acre property has seen over 100 incidents of weirdness. We're talking about animals disappearing into thin air, magnetic fields going haywire, mysterious lights, and even animals with glowing red eyes. Now, despite all the buzz, every attempt to investigate and recreate these occurrences has ended in failure. Some skeptics think that the current owners just make up these stories, because the previous owners never mentioned anything out of the ordinary. But it hasn't stopped folks from cashing in on the craziness. We've got movies, TV shows, and documentaries about Skinwalker Ranch, keeping the mystery alive and kicking. Mount Shasta, down in California's Cascade Range, has got quite a reputation. It's been a hotbed of myths and legends for centuries. The indigenous tribes in the area held this mountain in high regard, thinking there was a secret city tucked away inside. They believed the city had all sorts of extraordinary stuff, like intricate tunnels filled with dazzling jewels and treasures. In 1904, a British prospector claimed he had stumbled upon an underground village while exploring the mountain. He said he found gold, ancient artifacts, and even giant mummies. But here's the twist. When he was supposed to guide an exploration team back to the village, he simply vanished. Some folks think there really was a village inside Mount Shasta, but it's been abandoned for ages. Others, though, believe that an ancient civilization still calls this mountain home. If you're not ready to spend money on traveling to see spooky places, then just open Google Maps. The service has much to offer in terms of creepiness. Start with Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs chilling in the Peruvian desert. You'll see all types of shapes – spiders, spirals, birds, you name it. Still, you can only see them from above, for example, from an airplane or a drone. The weird thing is that they've been hanging out there since way before humans took to the skies. How on earth did they get there? Well, no plausible version here. It's still a mystery. Another Google Maps destination you gotta visit is the Rhyolite Ghost Town. Check out these super spooky sculptures standing right on the edge of Death Valley in Nevada. Let me tell you the wild and crazy story of how Rhyolite came to be in 1904. The thing is, one day, a lot of gold was found in that area. The news spread like wildfire, and hordes of people started flocking to Rhyolite. Things were popping there. They had all the essentials of a happening town. An ice cream parlor, a school, banks, even an ice plant. But, as luck would have it, things took a turn. The financial panic of 1907 hit, and it was like a deflation party in reverse. People started bailing out, and by 1920, only 14 people were left there. Nowadays, if you wander around Rhyolite, you'll see some epic sights. The main road takes you past these crumbling banks that were once filled with gold. Rhyolite is also famous for its bottle house, made of over 50,000 bottles. Paramount Pictures even stepped in to restore it in 1925 because they realized Rhyolite was the perfect filming location. There's a secret spot that's strictly off-limits to tourists – the Vatican's secret archives. Still, you can visit it without leaving your cozy couch. Just use Google Maps. Rumor has it that this library might hold the key to some serious paranormal stuff. So, if you're up for an adventure that combines history, art, and a sprinkle of extraterrestrial intrigue, Vatican City and its secret archives should definitely be on your travel bucket list. Surprise! There's more than 7 continents on our planet. Argoland, a hidden continent, may help us understand how our planet will look in the future. To find out how it hid from us and what secrets it holds, well, you'll just have to keep watching. Ready for a mystery? Scientists have been looking for a piece of land that's been missing for over 100 million years. Not exactly newsworthy, since people search for information about our planet's history all the time. You'd think it was probably this minuscule island somewhere in the middle of an ocean. Well, you'd be wrong, because this continent used to be as big as the entire U.S. territory. For a long time, geologists have been wondering whether a massive chunk of contemporary Australia vanished into thin air. Some believed it was simply hiding somewhere on the ocean floor. But thanks to some Dutch specialists and 7 years of investigating, we now know there are bits and pieces of this lost land mixed underneath the lush jungles of Southeast Asia. The continents we see in our geography manuals these days are like scattered pieces of a puzzle. There's even a nice experiment you can conduct to see for yourself. Find a world map online and print it out. Cut out all of the continents and play around with them for a while. You'll see they all fit together. Probably the most striking thing you'll see is how South America perfectly fits near Africa. If you close up the oceans that were formed in the last 200 million years, the continents look like they form a giant letter C. And that C is what scientists call the supercontinent Pangaea. It was swimming in an ocean called Panthalassa, and the inner portion of that letter C had a smaller stretch of water called the Tethys Ocean. It is in this small ocean where things get interesting. Back in the Jurassic period, this vanished continent, which scientists started calling Argoland, vanished and left a hole in Australia, now known as the Argo-Abyssal Plain. Geologists initially believed this was all due to a process called subduction. It's when one piece of the Earth's crust dives under another and recycles it into the planet's mantle. Usually, specialists track this continental vanishing through off-scraping. That's how they figured out, for instance, that India bumped into Asia and gave us the majestic Himalayan mountains. But for Argoland, things were a bit more complicated. Bits and pieces were popping up in places like Myanmar and Indonesia, but they behaved like these time-traveling relics, looking way older than when Argoland supposedly separated from Australia. It immediately raised the question, if one continent can behave so weirdly, how many others are out there doing the same? Thankfully, scientists have now put together the entire timeline of Argoland and figured out its mystery. It didn't sink or get swallowed up. It simply transformed into an archipelago, breaking into smaller pieces, called microcontinents, and floating away from Australia. These mini-continents then took a little journey before settling down in Southeast Asian jungles. This discovery fits right into the whole Pangea puzzle. It helps us better understand how continents break up and make up, all in one discovery, revealing secrets of biodiversity and climate back from in the day. If you'd like to find out more secrets about history, civilization, or random day-to-day objects, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Like, for instance, the mystery behind this invisible species line in Indonesia. It's called the Wallace Line, named after the British explorer Alfred Russel Wallace. Over 150 years ago, Wallace was on a journey around the Malay archipelago, visiting thousands of islands. What he found was that animals on one side of this invisible line were considerably different from ones on the other side. This invisible line is like a wall between marsupials and tigers, for instance, or honey-eaters and trogons. But now we know that around 35 million years ago, Australia broke up with Antarctica and collided with Asia, and this continental love triangle triggered significant changes. It didn't just change the way the land looked, it also messed with the species of animals on each side of the Wallace Line. In more recent times, a bunch of specialists published a study saying this collision and climate chaos made Asian species comfy living in the Malay archipelago. Meanwhile, the Aussie animals weren't as happy with the new environment. It was too hot and wet for some, and others just couldn't handle the tropical island lifestyle. The discovery of this continental shift towards Asia might also explain a recent finding of a human species that didn't seem to make any sense either. You see, in this hidden cave in the Philippines, archaeologists stumbled upon a new human ancestor. It seems that about 50,000 years ago, on the island of Luzon, there was this ancient human-like species. The lead researcher believed this finding was crucial for understanding human evolution in Asia, and it named this new species after the island, Homo luzonensis. Now, here's where it gets a bit confusing. The bones found by archaeologists had one small problem. They had a weird mix of traits that hadn't been seen together in any other hominid species. Smaller teeth, similar to ours, yet hands and feet that were more like our ancient humanoid ancestors. It was those throwback limbs in particular that connected this human species with the long-lost Southern Territory. That's because they have this primitive look, like these hard-to-pronounce guys, for instance. Only these two species are separated by 2 to 3 million years of time in evolution. Many have wondered, is Homo luzonensis really a new species? Not everyone is convinced. But it may also explain why living creatures are also affected by the constant shifting of the land underneath us. Now, just because they haven't changed much during our lifetime, it doesn't mean our continents will look like this forever. They evolved from this large megacontinent, and they'll most likely end up in a similar position in the future. On that note, a geologist from a European university tried to predict the future of Earth's supercontinents. As a starting point, he used an earthquake that occurred in Portugal back in 1755. when tectonic plates behaved a bit differently than they should have. After years of research, he came up with a theory in 2016. He believed that the stitches between these tectonic plates might be coming apart, setting the stage for a bigger rupture. It's like when glass cracks between two holes in a car windshield. If this happens, a subduction zone could stretch from the Mediterranean all the way up past Ireland, bringing volcanoes, earthquakes, and new mountains to these areas. If all goes according to this plan, the Atlantic Ocean will disappear, and so will the Pacific, turning into one large stretch of water. Instead of the 7 continents we know today, we'll get a new supercontinent, which he called Arica, because it would have Australia and the Americas at its heart. Now, it's not the only possible scenario, though. Novo Pangea might be another, and it's easy to foresee. The Atlantic stays open and the Pacific closes. Then there's Amasia. For this one, you'd have to imagine the Arctic Ocean closing and the Atlantic and Pacific staying open. Everything shifts to the north around the North Pole, except Antarctica. One final scenario would be called Pangea Ultima. Slow down the spreading in the Atlantic, and a new subduction plate pops up on the America's east coast. Well, either way, if all the continents collide in the future once more, some say it won't be fun to experience. It's believed that in around 250 million years, we'll feel like we're being trapped in a sweltering, soggy plastic bag. Weirdly, that bag will be the best place to live on Earth, the coastal areas. As for the inland spots, they'll be sizzling, like a desert on fire. Many of the species of animals we know today might not make it. As for us humans, we'll need to be creative if we want to withstand the heat. We should be thankful, though. These digital models are still great because we can use them to test all sorts of interesting ideas. For example, how these supercontinents would mess with tides. Taking future space travels into consideration, these models can help us understand the climates of exoplanets too. Those are located outside our solar system.
It was hot in the tropics, a type of heat unknown to the men aboard the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria ships, led by Italian explorer Christopher Columbus. It had been months since these men left their home cities in Europe, and until then, Europe was all they knew. They were given a difficult and even dangerous task. Spain hired Columbus to find a new western route to Asia. They needed new routes for trading and buying spices, but it was far from a simple job. I mean, crossing the ocean never is. Little did those sailors know that their lives were about to change forever. "Land in sight!" someone must have shouted on board. But when they finally stepped on that new foreign land, they discovered they were not in Asia. They had landed in the Americas. You've probably heard this tale before. Historically speaking, Columbus arrived in the Americas in 1492. But what would have happened if Columbus's ship had faced a lethal storm in the Atlantic Ocean and had never made it to the new land? What would today's history look like? First things first, nobody discovered anything. When we say that the Americas were discovered, we're kind of ignoring the millions of people who already lived there. You see, the Americas were only discovered from Europe's point of view. Columbus would only have discovered something if when he got there, he was faced with acres and acres of empty land. But that was not the case at all. Second, Columbus was not the first explorer to land in the Americas. Believe it or not, the Vikings approached American shores in the 10th century. Their expeditions have been well documented and accepted by scholars. Here's what might have happened. Around the year 1000 CE, Viking explorer Leif Erikson sailed to a place called Vinland. Cute name, huh? It's now a region in Canada called Newfoundland. But his crew didn't stay too long. They arrived to find 10 Native Americans napping under their overturned canoes. They attempted some trade, but I'm guessing the Vikings weren't too friendly, and the Americans didn't really like them. The Vikings' account of the encounter shows they felt outnumbered and menaced, so they sailed away back to their land. That makes sense, right? As I said earlier, there were millions of people living in the ginormous continent of the Americas. Any foreigner would be outnumbered there. Now take a look at what North America looked like before our buddy Chris got there. It was not divided into the normal states we're used to. And if Columbus had never arrived, the United States would probably never have been united to begin with. After all, there were hundreds of first Americans living in these lands, and they lived amongst their own tribes, quite different from the Europeans. It's not accurate to think that there were no political systems going on in the Americas before Europeans arrived. We just need to understand that they were different from what we're used to today. When Europeans arrived, they imported their belief systems with them, from religious beliefs and language systems to things as simple as clothing habits. If the Americas had developed on their own, maybe their sense of fashion would be completely different today. You see, Europeans had a developed sense of fashion by the time they arrived in the West. They wore things such as this and this. But those don't really work in the tropics, do they? For them, fashion had to do with showing a certain economic status, while in the Americas, that didn't exist. For Native Americans, clothing was mainly functional and related to the weather. In warmer climates, Native people would wear short-like cloths to cover their intimate parts. They would walk bare-chested and use shoes known as moccasins. Yes, similar to the moccasins you probably own. In colder climates, they would resort to using leather and fur parkas. Of course, there was always the special clothing used for ceremonial purposes. So I'm guessing that if Columbus never reached the Americas, brands such as the Gap, Hollister, and Forever 21 would have never existed. But we could live with that, couldn't we? Here's a wild thought. Let's say that by the 1700s, Native Americans had developed complex engineering skills. They built big boats, maybe a bit smaller in size than the traditional European ships, and decided to venture across the ocean. Let's say they were the ones who arrived on European shores, in places such as Spain and Portugal. They carried gifts and goods with them for trading, of course. This was also a common practice amongst them back home, known as potlatch. Sure, they were received with suspicion by the Europeans, who had only ever traded with Asia. But with this inverted encounter, a different type of relationship began between Native Americans and Europeans. Since Europeans didn't claim ownership of the Americas, the people from the so-called New Land weren't considered inferior to them. Actually, they stood side by side as equals, each one with their own power and set of knowledge. Native Americans taught Europeans a new type of ruling system, a more decentralized one. So modern-day structures of government would look really different. Maybe Europeans decided that 4 years was a long time for someone to hold decision power, so they implemented smaller and more frequent elections. Oh, and the landscape of European cities also changed a lot. Instead of huge statues made of copper and bronze showing men in ships on their way to the Americas, the Europeans built totem poles in honor of their alliances with first Americans. In terms of medical and medicinal knowledge, they had a lot to exchange about. While Europeans were making advances in traditional medicine, Americans had developed an impressive knowledge of herbs that could heal a series of things. Before they knew it, Europeans were selling different varieties of plants in their pharmaceutical establishments. They had one big barrier though, language. Since Europeans never arrived on American shores, they also never taught their language to Americans. So maybe in this scenario, both cultures brought in their best linguists and tried creating a new language from scratch. Something that could be comprehensible from both perspectives and that could encompass both of their worldviews. The implications of this on modern-day life would be really profound if you stop to think about it. Let's say that this newly created language involved some symbols and drawings in it. You see, Native Americans often told stories using symbols known as pictograms. They were quite literal sometimes. As you can see, a mountain was represented by, well, a mountain. It's crazy to think that this system of communication has been around for 5,000 years, since it was actually invented by the Sumerians. And hey, maybe even our laptop keyboards would come equipped with these symbols, and you could write more visually hybrid and fun emails than the ones you write today. The American landscape would have also changed. You see, if neither Columbus nor any of the other European dudes that went after him reached the so-called New Land, Central and Latin American cities would look completely different than they do today. Maybe the bustling empires of the time, such as the Inca, the Maya, and the Aztec, would have grown immensely. To be fair, they were already pretty big by the time Europeans got there. Some pre-Columbian Maya cities were as big as medieval London and Paris in terms of population. But oh my, the Mayan Empire would have grown so much that it could have spread out all over of Central America. They could have developed their pyramid building craft up to the point that they managed to build an even larger pyramid than the Giza pyramid in Egypt. So tourists would come from all over the world to visit. And in South America, let's just say the region could have turned into a huge forest, bigger than the Amazon. The Inca could have spread through the Andes and then into the mainland. Places such as Brazil and Argentina never existed. But in their place, there would have been dreamy tropical settlements, which would have become a worldwide reference in sustainable living.
When we think of active volcanoes, one region comes to mind: the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. 3/4 of Earth's volcanoes sit within this belt. Compare the area to Australia, which doesn't have any volcanic activity. The old continent of Europe is also calm, or at least we like to think so. Can you guess what the most active volcano in Europe is? If you thought of Mount Etna on the island of Sicily in Italy, you were right. The volcano has erupted about 200 times and has been far from sleeping in recent decades. The last time this happened was in August 2023. The highest mountain in the Mediterranean is 500 million years old. But in Iceland, there is a much younger volcano. It sprang into action on the 10th of July 2023. In the afternoon, 3 fissures appeared in the ground on a peninsula in the southwest of the island. This was at a base of a small mountain peak. Its name means Little Ram in the local language. The volcano spewed molten lava high into the air. There were also gas plumes in the area. But the scientific community wasn't surprised by the event. They already knew about the volcanic area that stretches between the cities of Reykjavik and Keflavik. Its name is hard to pronounce. Hey, I want to buy a vowel. It had already erupted during the previous 2 summers. This activity came after 8 centuries of dormancy. In the days leading up to the latest eruption, seismologists, the scientists who study earthquakes, recorded over 12,000 tremors. When the ground opened up in July, the fissures were over 1.5 miles long. The following morning, 2 of them closed. All the lava was now coming out of the last fissure. It grew into an elongated cone, the simplest shape of volcano we are all familiar with. The lava soon filled a large crater. It grew almost 100 feet tall during the first week, and it is still growing. On the night when the eruption started, lava spread out in all directions. Its cinders set ablaze the dry moss in the vicinity. Local authorities closed off the surrounding area. There were toxic gases from the volcanoes and smoke from the burning moss. Firefighters flocked to the area. After a week, they proclaimed the area safe. Visitors soon came to witness the birth of Europe's youngest volcano. This form of tourism is quite developed in Iceland. People come from all over the world to watch active volcanoes. The land of fire and ice is home to more than 130 volcanoes. Some 30 of them are active. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Is volcano tourism safe? In Iceland, it is. The country's authorities research and constantly monitor all of the hotspots. The island is dotted with several dozen seismic stations. These help researchers accurately predict future eruptions, and emergency services are accustomed to these sorts of events. They can quickly cordon off danger zones. This is what happened in 2010. A volcano in the south of the island, the name of which everyone struggled to pronounce, erupted. It spewed out a plume of steam and ash that was 7 miles high. This wasn't a fun time to be an air traveler. Winds carried the enormous plume southeast toward northern Europe. Many countries closed their airspace for several days for safety reasons. The volcano erupted in March, but the Earth was shaking from January the same year, so seismologists knew that an eruption was approaching. When it comes to the continent's youngest volcano, the tourist infrastructure is already there. Visitors can leave their cars at a designated parking lot. Then they go on a 5-hour-long trek. This leads to a viewing deck. Tourists are so close to the epicenter that they can feel the heat haze from the crater. The sight is the most impressive at nighttime. Safety is never a concern. Scientists regularly chart out hazard maps that outline the borders of lava fields. This way, visitors who stick by the rules are never in harm's way. More than a week after the eruption started, a section of the crater collapsed. Lava flowed downhill west of the volcano. This majestic smoldering hot river is slow-moving lava. Scientists categorize it as an AA type. The term is Hawaiian. It describes basaltic lava that has a rough and brittle surface. The flow is composed of broken lava blocks that are called clinkers. They fall off as the substance flows. This reveals red-hot areas. The cooler sections of lava are gray and black in color. When it moves forward, it produces a distinctive sound like shattering glass. Nearly a month after the eruption of the new volcano, we got aerial footage of an interesting phenomenon. A tornado formed directly over the lava flow. This occurs due to the high temperatures in the area. When the conditions are right, a column of heated air can easily turn into a mini tornado. Scientists observed a similar event happen during the 2018 eruption of Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. The lava fields of Europe's second-largest island tell the story of the creation of Iceland. It sits above the place where the North American and Eurasian plates meet each other. Tectonic plates are huge, rocky chunks of Earth's most outer layer. There are roughly 20 of them. They rest on a partially molten layer of rock. All the lava we see on the surface starts its journey here. You could say that these plates float on molten rock. Their boundaries are unstable, so when two plates grind past each other, they release tremendous amounts of energy. The formation of volcanoes is one result. These are places where the molten rock travels upward to the surface. Iceland began to form some 60 million years ago. The tectonic plates under the ocean drifted apart. Enough lava piled up on the surface to create solid ground. This ancient rock is under the waves today. As new lava reaches the surface and cools down, it pushes the old rock away from the center of the island. That's why the oldest parts of Iceland aren't 60, but only 16 million years old. The country's active lava fields are young in geological terms. Some of them are under 1,000 years old. Scientists consider the island a hot spot for volcanoes, pun intended. Nearly a third of the basaltic lava that reaches the Earth's surface in recorded history came from Icelandic eruptions. Fissure swarms, like the ones before the 2023 eruption, cover 30% of the Nordic country. For this reason, only a quarter of the island is inhabited. Norse Vikings were the first people to settle in Iceland at the beginning of the 10th century. Nature threw them a loud welcoming party. Just a few years after their arrival, they witnessed one of the greatest volcanic eruptions in history. Vikings came from a region without volcanoes, so they had no clue as to what was going on. Today, Icelanders are used to such events. This is good because their homeland is entering a new era of volcanic activity. Volcanologists suspect that recent events are an introduction to decades of more frequent eruptions. The peninsula that is home to Earth's youngest volcano is just 17 miles southwest of Iceland's capital city. It's been dormant for a long time. Present-day eruptions there are a reminder that the natural processes that created Iceland are still ongoing. Recently, scientists discovered that there's a historical link between volcanic eruptions in the north of Europe and glaciers. Our planet went through at least 5 major ice ages. These were exceptionally lengthy periods when the average temperature on Earth dropped. The result was the expansion of ice sheets across northern Europe and North America. The last ice age ended some 10,000 years ago. Researchers are still trying to fully understand how these glacial periods affected volcanic activity. They suspect that the sheer weight of all that ice disrupts the flow of magma underground. When glaciers retreat, the pressure is lifted. This makes it easier for lava to flow upward to the surface where it bursts. Now, have you ever wondered about the longest time it rained nonstop? Even an hour of rain could be a big deal if you're hanging out in a dry spot like the Atacama Desert in South America. It can set a record for that place. But in super rainy spots like the Amazon rainforest, having 40 days of rain in a row might not even turn heads. Interestingly, we only have rainfall records where people live and keep track. Many towns and cities skip the whole rain data collection thing. Plus, there are so many places on Earth where nobody lives, like rainforests or the open ocean, so our rainfall knowledge is a bit patchy. Now, if we were to talk about records, Hawaii has a couple. People there have some seriously long rainy days, especially on islands where winds come from the mountains. From 1939 to 40, they recorded 331 days in a row with measurable rainfall. If you're a person who likes to watch the rain at home with a cup of tea, this might sound ideal to you. But we need to see the sun at least occasionally. Getting some sun is good for your body and soul. Obviously, you get vitamin D. Just 5 to 15 minutes of sunlight a few times a week can make a real difference. And have you ever heard the phrase sunny disposition? Researchers found that people feel down when there's not much sun around. Sunny days make us happier. Sunshine boosts your serotonin, which fights off bad moods. That sunny serotonin isn't just for your mood, it also helps you sleep. And it's also a heart assistant. When the sun hits your skin, your body releases something called nitric oxide, which chills out your blood pressure. Healthy blood pressure means a healthier heart. Now, go tell that to the people who had to go through 881 consecutive days of rain. Yeah, the record was set almost 3 full years of rain. This happened from 1913 to 1916 in Hononumomaki, Hawaii. It rained like there was no tomorrow because the region is a tropical rainforest. For 2 million years and completely reshaped the planet's destiny. At the end of the Permian era, around 234 million years ago, I wasn't around then, but I read about it, the Triassic period began, marked by the onset of an extended period of rainfall. This phenomenon is now called the Carnian pluvial event. Well, that's what they decided to call it. Recent studies, supported by evidence, suggest that it didn't reshape the planet in that sense, and that it was triggered by coal combustion. The rain wasn't continuous either. So we just debunked a myth here. Woohoo! Next, we have columnar jointing. This is the fancy term for groove patterns that form in lava flows, sills, dikes, and other rocky stuff. These lava creations come in all shapes and sizes. Most are seen as straight, parallel columns. Some have curves and varying widths. They can be as high as 1,181 inches. I'll save you the math. It's roughly 98 feet. The columns are formed by pressure and the cooling process. As lava becomes cooler, it shrinks and forms cracks. Once a crack starts, the lava moves around. These cracks expand to the surface of the flow. Water sneaks into the cooling lava, making it chill down fast starting from the surface, leaving its mark in those patterns. Devil's Postpile in California is a must-visit place if you want to see columnar jointing. But hey, they're found all around the world. Let's raise our heads to the sky to see something magical. Fire rainbows, also known as circumhorizontal arcs, look like flames dancing above the clouds. To see these eye-catching arcs, you need a special cloud type called cirrus clouds and the sun at least 58 degrees high in the sky. It's a VIP collaboration between sunlight and clouds. Let's break it down further. Take London, for instance. It's around 51 degrees north. Now, sorry Londoners, no fire rainbows for you. Now we move to deep waters to see underwater crop circles. These are giant circular patterns found in 1995 near the shores of southern Japan. Locals were baffled. They dubbed them mystery circles, as if the ocean had a secret talent for sand art. The mystery was solved in 2011. The unlikely artist turned out to be a tiny pufferfish, just 5 inches long. The researchers found out that males were on a mission, spending a solid 7 to 9 days building their circles by swimming in and out and using their fins to carve valleys into the sandy floor. They decorate the peaks of their creations with bits of shells and corals, turning their sandy canvases into masterpieces. Okay, they don't do it for the sake of art. The curious circles have a purpose. The sandy center of the circle serves as a nest. Male swimming moves mix things up, getting sand particles just where they need to be. When a lady pufferfish swims by, the male twirls and dances, swirling sand around. If she is impressed and thinks he is the one, she lays her eggs in the sandy heart of the circle. There you go, another happy ending. Now let's look at frost flowers. You might have seen thin sheets of ice that look like delicate petals and sometimes pop up from the stems of plants. The ice is about as thick as a credit card. It forms when the weather is cold outside. The soil is damp but not frozen, as well as plant stems. Not all plants produce these frost flowers, and the conditions must be just right. Here's how it happens. The water inside a plant stem gets pulled up from the ground. When it freezes, it expands and cracks the stem vertically. As it hits the chilly air, it turns into ice. As more water gets pulled up through the crack, it keeps pushing out super thin layers of ice. Whether a frost flower looks like a narrow ribbon or a wider one depends on the length of the crack. And the way it curls and shapes itself into these petals is random, or the reason might lie in the difference in friction along the sides of the crack. These frost flowers are unique and delicate, and they don't last long. They melt or just disappear quickly. To spot them, keep an eye out for tall grass, especially in places that don't get mowed much. Pay attention to purple ironweed, blackberries, and wing stems.
It's been decades since the last manned moon landing, Apollo 17, which happened in December 1972. Isn't it time we thought about going back to our dusty satellite, and maybe even staying there? NASA has made a promise on this subject. They're preparing to send astronauts on the moon again, perhaps by 2025. This will all happen through a program called Artemis. It's also going to include the first woman ever to experience the lunar surface. Now you might ask, why haven't we done this already? One former NASA administrator said something interesting on the subject. It's not because of scientific or technological issues. Problem was that the potential projects took too long and were just too costly. You see, space travel, especially when it involves humans, isn't easy on the pockets. It's true that, in recent years, NASA had budgets of billions of dollars. Sure sounds like enough money, right? Well, not when you check out their to-do list. That's because they have to consider everything. From telescopes and giant rocket projects to missions also targeting the Sun, Jupiter, Mars, and beyond. When you look at it this way, NASA needs to be very good at budgeting to achieve all those goals. It's not just because of finances, though. The moon itself is quite problematic. It poses real dangers that cannot be taken lightly. For starters, its surface is filled with craters and boulders that aren't easy to land on. Then, there is the moon dust, or regolith, if you'd like to call it by its scientific name. It was created over many years by meteorite impacts. It's extremely harsh and sticks to everything. It can potentially damage spacesuits, vehicles, and systems quite quickly. Also, dealing with the lunar habitat isn't a walk in the park either. The moon has no protective atmosphere. What this means is that for 14 days at a time, the lunar surface is faced with harsh rays from the sun. That period is followed by another 2 weeks of total darkness. All these changes create extreme temperatures, which us humans are not really accustomed to. There are solutions, don't worry. NASA is working on dust and sun-resistant spacesuits and vehicles. They're even developing a system that might supply electricity during those lunar nights. What's even more interesting about this system is it could come in handy on Mars too, once we get there. NASA also needs to draw in really smart people for its projects. Think about it. The average age of the people working for the mission control for Apollo 13 was just 26 years old. And these people had already been part of numerous missions by that time, which means they'd had considerable experience from a very young age. But here's where other individuals can help too. In recent years, it wasn't just NASA who's been working tirelessly to revolutionize space travel. There are many successful people out there with enough resources to join in on these efforts. Some are developing new types of rockets that can land on the moon too. In total, NASA landed 12 people on our satellite. It's definitely one of the most awesome moments in its history, if not the best. And those astronauts did amazing things up there. They brought back rocks, took snapshots, did science experiments, and even left flags behind. These were all important moments of the Apollo missions. But they weren't meant to create a safe place for humans on the moon. Scientists have had this idea of a lunar space station for a long time now. It's only logical. After all, it's just a 3-day trip from Earth. It means we can, technically, afford to make little mistakes here and there, without messing up the whole project. Plus, we'd learn so much before venturing even further into space. A moon base could provide fuel for deep space missions. We could also build telescopes up there and launch them way easier in space. It could also help us in another important project: figure out how to make Mars habitable too. Not to mention, a lunar space station would help us learn more about the moon's origin. Who knows, it could even bring in some money because of all that fun, exciting lunar tourism. Either way, the Apollo moon program took a lot of work. For starters, let's look at the sheer number of people involved. Around 400,000, from every corner of the states. Not everything was picture perfect, tough. There were two main unfortunate events. Firstly, a fire mishap at the launch pad of Apollo 1. Secondly, an oxygen tank decided to throw a tantrum on Apollo 13, causing severe issues mid-mission. An important part of the project was Saturn V. It is to this day the most powerful rocket flown successfully, being 36 stories high. Still finding it hard to picture? This rocket stood twice as tall as Niagara Falls. Thanks to Saturn V, NASA successfully completed 13 missions. This included chauffeuring 24 astronauts towards the moon, with half of them even having a little walk on its surface. The existing rockets and space shuttles can't go beyond low Earth orbit. In simpler terms, they can't reach the moon with all the gadgets astronauts need to thrive. Current space vehicles are just not capable of carrying that load, at least not since the Apollo missions happened. Regardless, we did make a lot of progress on Earth and are ready to send astronauts to our satellite pretty soon. Here's where the Artemis project comes in. It's a program overseen by NASA. And to make sure it all goes well, NASA previously launched Orion, a spacecraft with no crew on board to orbit the moon and return to Earth. Think of it as an automated test drive. Before we actually send people out there again, we need to make sure all the devices work properly. One day, Orion will be the vehicle that will take astronauts to the moon again. It features a launch abort system to keep astronauts safe in case something bad happens during launch. It also has a service module, which is the powerhouse that fuels and propels Orion and keeps astronauts alive with water, oxygen, power, and temperature control. All these future projects make one wonder, what will life on the moon be like anyway? We can only use our imagination for now. Some say we'll be living in homes straight out of a fairy tale, something like a cozy hobbit hole. Living underground on the moon might be a must. That's due to the scorching temperatures and the lack of oxygen. If you add meteorite threats and the non-stop radiation, it's no wonder we can't just walk on its surface. What about transportation? Big and small companies alike are trying to create the ideal moon ride. If current estimations are current, one type of moon taxi will take off as soon as 2024. Unlike our current rockets, these space taxis won't have to deal with the harsh conditions of re-entering Earth's atmosphere. It will be easier for them to make multiple round trips. To support our lunar living, we'll need to have a special area for space taxis to safely take off and land. Think of it as a landing pad on a firm, flat stretch of moon surface, protected by walls to shield against moon dust. Moving around on the moon's surface will be made easier too. The next generation vehicles we're talking about will have their own controlled environment, which means you won't need a spacesuit while inside. Should feel like stepping out of your space ride for a bit. Then of course, you'll need to put on your spacesuit. All right. So we've got our homes and our rides sorted. But what about fuel? That's where the moon throws us a lifeline. The moon's lighter gravity means we don't need as much power to escape its pull. Plus, the moon has ice, and that's super handy. We might be able to convert this ice into rocket fuel. We'll need dedicated space gadgets to help gather this ice. One such tool is called Trident. It's like a drill, perfect for digging into the icy moon surface. Additional robotic helpers would then turn this ice into fuel and deliver it to a space gas station. If this works, rockets on their way to Mars could stop by for a quick fuel top-up before continuing their journey.
Hey, want to take a wild trip back in time to the Jurassic or Cambrian era? Trust me, it's going to be a wild ride, but surviving in those ancient environments would require some serious skills. At the start of the Cambrian era, the air would be as thin as at the base camp of Mount Everest, but the climate was actually pretty chill and consistent back then. However, there was one teeny tiny problem: no land plants or animals to feast on. So forget about firing up the grill for a juicy steak. Instead, you'd have to come up with creative ways to catch trilobites and other funky-looking shellfish. Good luck finding a spear without any wood or a fishing net without any plant fibers. And get ready to eat them raw, unless you can figure out how to extract oil from these creatures or burn dry seaweed. But wait, if you're looking for a more comfortable existence, you gotta travel to 100 million years ago, to the Silurian period. Here, things start to get a bit easier. The air is still thin, but there's a bit more oxygen to go around. Plus, the climate is warmer and cozier. Simple land plants have finally made their debut. Not only that, but the first bony fish also show up on the scene, so you might actually find something more palatable to munch on. Just watch out for those prehistoric millipedes and spider-like creatures that share the land with you. They might not be the best dinner companions. Yeah, it all sounds fun and feasible, but let's talk a bit more about this crazy idea of instant transportation. If you magically appeared in a different time, the first thing you'd have to worry about is the amount of oxygen in the air. Now, looking at that fancy graph up there, it's pretty clear that oxygen levels used to be super low before about 0.85 billion years ago. Like, we're talking just a few percent of the atmosphere. And there wasn't even any O2 in the air until this event called the Great Oxygenation happened about 2.3 billion years ago. So if you ended up back then, surviving would totally depend on how fit you are. If the oxygen concentration was less than 10%, you'd probably pass out, but not pass away. If it was just above 10%, you might be able to function, but you wouldn't exactly be living your best life. Based on oxygen alone, it seems like you could survive if you showed up around 0.75 billion years ago, give or take a few million years. Now let's talk about the cool stuff on land. The first land plants didn't show up until around 450 million years ago during the Ordovician period. Before that, there were some large algae hanging around, mostly in the range of 500 to 600 million years ago. But there wasn't a whole lot going on until those land plants came along. Other forms of life didn't start showing up on land until closer to 300 to 400 million years ago. But there was this critter, a myriapod, that lived around 428 million years ago, and it was one of the earliest land dwellers. I mean, if you lived back then, you'd have to come up with fancy recipes featuring myriapods. Not exactly mouth-watering. Don't worry if you find yourself back in time before all that land action. Around 500 to 600 million years ago, the oceans were teeming with life. There were these creatures called the Ediacaran fauna, and they were some of the first well-preserved organisms. Some of them probably hung out in the shallow areas near the shore, so you might be able to get your hands on them for a meal. But remember, there weren't any land plants yet, so you'd probably have to eat them raw and with no potatoes on the side. You'd have a sort of prehistoric sashimi on your plate. Now, around 500 million years ago, things started to get really interesting in the oceans after something called the Cambrian explosion. If you ended up in the Cambrian period, you'd have all sorts of weird animals to catch in the coastal zones. Check out the fossils from the Burgess Shale for some wild ideas. Look at these brachiopods, arthropods, and even worm-like critters. But again, no woody land plants at this point, so your meals would mostly consist of raw arthropods and algae. Alrighty, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of ice ages. It's when the Earth gets super chilly for a ridiculously long time, like millions and millions of years. This causes giant ice sheets and glaciers to spread all over the place, covering massive areas of the planet's surface. Believe it or not, our planet has experienced at least 5 major ice ages. The very first one happened about 2 billion years ago and lasted for 300 million years. The most recent ice age kicked off at around 2.6 million years ago, and we're technically still in it. So, we're in the middle of an ice age, but we're not currently living in an icy wonderland. That's because we're currently in an interglacial period. During an ice age, temperatures go through ups and downs. When it's warmer, those ice sheets and glaciers start to melt, creating what we call interglacials. And when it gets colder, they expand again, which we call glacials. So right now, we're enjoying the warm interglacial period of the most recent ice age, which kicked off around 11,000 years ago. When people mention the ice age, they're usually talking about the last glacial period that started around 115,000 years ago and ended roughly 11,000 years ago when our current interglacial period began. During that glacial period, things were way cooler than they are now. At its peak, when ice sheets covered most of North America, the average global temperature was about 46 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a whole 11 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than today's global average temperature. That temperature difference may not seem like much, but it was enough to turn most of North America and Eurasia into ice-covered landscapes. The Earth was also a lot drier, and sea levels were way lower because most of the water was trapped in those ice sheets. We're talking vast steppes, dry, grassy plains as far as the eye can see. And let's not forget about the savannas, warm, grassy plains, and deserts that were also part of the icy scene. During the Ice Age, there were some familiar critters roaming around, like brown bears, caribou, and wolves. But there were also some mega cool creatures that sadly went extinct when the Ice Age came to an end. We're talking mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and giant ground sloths. Now, there are a bunch of theories floating around about why these magnificent beasts bit the dust. One idea is that us humans hunted them into extinction when we crossed paths with these megafauna. Our species, Homo sapiens, actually survived the Ice Age. We've been kicking it on this planet for around 300,000 years now, starting out in Africa and then spreading our awesomeness all over the globe. Some of our ancestors stayed put in Africa and didn't experience the full icy effects. Others ventured into different parts of the world, even braving the freezing cold of Europe's glacial environments. But we weren't the only ones out there. At the beginning of the Ice Age, there were other hominids, our closer relatives, scattered across Eurasia. We had the Neanderthals chilling in Europe, and the mysterious Denisovans hanging out in Asia. Sadly, both of these groups seems to have vanished before the Ice Age wrapped up. Now, there are countless theories about how our species managed to survive the Ice Age while our hominin buddies didn't make it. Some believe it's because we're ridiculously adaptable and used our social skills, communication, and nifty tools to our advantage. And get this, humans didn't just hunker down during the Ice Age. Nope, we explored new territories and made ourselves at home. For the longest time, folks thought humans didn't set foot in North America until after the ice sheets started melting. Fossilized footprints discovered at White Sands National Park in New Mexico prove that humans have been rocking it in North America for at least 23,000 years, right around the peak of the last ice age.
Picture this. You're floating about in the depths of space, gazing down on our blue marble of a planet. What's on top? You might think it's the North Pole, but that isn't necessarily so. The truth is, our collective belief that the North is at the top of the world doesn't have any solid scientific backing. It's just one of those things we've accepted over time. And this acceptance has a compelling history, with a dash of astrophysics, a bit of psychology, and a surprising twist. It influences how we feel about our world more than we might think. Figuring out where you are is crucial for survival, and that's true for most species, not just us humans. Similar to honeybees, for example, humans have a knack for creating mental maps of our surroundings. But where we really stand out is in our efforts to share these maps with others. We've been at it for a while now, drawing maps on anything from cave walls to computer screens. The earliest ones we've found date back to 14,000 years ago. Despite this long history, it's only in the last few centuries that we've decided that the North should consistently be at the top of the map. History buffs tell us that for a long time, the North was hardly ever at the top because it symbolized darkness. The West didn't make the cut either, given that's where the sun bows out each evening. However, early Asian maps seem to defy this trend. Now, before you say it, their compasses weren't the reason they put North at the top. Early Asian compasses were actually aligned to point south, seen as a more favorable direction than the cold, dark north. But in these maps, the emperor, who resided up north, was always placed at the top, with his loyal subjects gazing upwards towards him. Looking back, every culture had its own idea of what was worth looking up to, leading to varied orientations of early maps. The Egyptians preferred the east, where the sun graces us each morning. Early Arabic maps favored the south. European maps from the same era put the east at the top. So, when did everyone decide that north was the new top? You might be tempted to credit it to explorers like Columbus and Magellan who navigated by the North Star. But they didn't really see the world in that light. Columbus, for instance, saw the world with the east at the top, believing he was headed toward paradise. Mercator's 1569 world map was a game changer, considering it was the first to factor in the Earth's switch to more accurate navigation. But even then, the emphasis wasn't on the north. Mercator projected the poles to infinity, considering them relatively unimportant as sailors didn't venture there often. It's possible that the choice to place north on top was simply because the Europeans, who were doing their fair share of exploring, were located in the northern hemisphere with a whole lot more land to cover and people to meet. For whatever reason, this north-up idea has stuck. Even when a NASA astronaut in 1972 snapped a photo of the Earth with the south at the top, it was flipped over to avoid confusion. Here's where it gets interesting. When you gaze at Earth from space, the concept of up and down loses all sense. Sure, Earth aligns with the plane of other planets in our solar system because we all share a cosmic birth story, but we could just as well flip the image or put the sun on top or bottom depending on your cosmic viewpoint. Even within the Milky Way, our solar system is tilted by about 63 degrees. If you think about it, the concepts of up, down, left, or right don't really apply in space. But how about a change of pace? Should we be open to viewing our world from a different perspective? There's some psychological evidence that our north-up mentality might be skewing our perceptions of value. Most folks consider the north to be up and the south down. It even made psychologists wonder if these associations might influence how people value different places on a map. When shown a map of a made-up city, people were more likely to choose a residence in the northern part. And when asked where hypothetical people of different social status would live, they allocated the rich to the north and the less fortunate to the south. It's not too big of a leap to speculate that humans might be less bothered about what happens to regions lower than where they are on the map. But there's a simple solution: flip the map upside down. These experiments showed that this simple action wiped out the north equals good bias. On that note, south-up maps are already available online. Australians would enjoy this change, that's for sure. Whatever it is that you'd prefer at the top of your map, you would need a compass to guide you. Have you ever paused to think of its system? It is one of the oldest gadgets we've got in our survival toolkit. It's been around for centuries, serving as a beacon for adventurers, travelers, and explorers, guiding them through uncharted oceans and helping them discover new continents. Basically, compasses turned humans from stay-at-home types into globe-trotting nomads. Our beautiful blue planet isn't just a spinning ball in the cosmos. It also has its own magnetic field. Imagine it as a colossal magnet, humming with invisible energy. This is all thanks to Earth's core, a ball of molten iron under terrific pressure right at the center of our planet. This core, part liquid, part solid crystal, churns and swirls due to Earth's spin, creating the magnetic field that gives us our north and south poles. But here's where it gets a bit complicated. These magnetic poles don't perfectly line up with the Earth's geographic poles, the ones that the Earth spins around. They're close, sure, but not exactly in the same place. This is why the compass, which reacts to magnetic fields, doesn't point directly to what we call true north, which is the geographic North Pole. Instead, it points to the magnetic north, located a bit off from the true one. But don't worry, it's close enough to get us where we need to go. Let's talk more about this true north versus magnetic north business. Remember the piece of news from September 2019, when for the first time in over 360 years, compasses at Greenwich pointed to the true north? Well, that's quite a rare occurrence. Usually compasses point towards magnetic north, which isn't a constant spot on the map. It changes and drifts over time, following shifts in the Earth's core. On the other hand, true north refers to the geographic North Pole, a specific unchanging point on Earth's surface. So when you're holding a compass, it's really the magnetic north it's directing you toward, not the true north. Here's where things get even more fun. The angle between the direction of the true north and the magnetic north, as shown by the compass, is called declination. It's a fancy word for a simple concept. Now, because Earth's magnetic field isn't a simple, straightforward thing, it has its wobbles and dips. The declination isn't the same everywhere. It varies from place to place. Also, here's what it's made of. It has this tiny needle that's made from a metal that's been magnetized. Iron's a common one. They set this needle on a little pointy thing, or pivot, and let it float in some kind of liquid. Often, it's mineral oil or something similar. This lets the needle spin around and dance with the Earth's magnetic field. When you hold your compass flat in your hand, the needle settles down and points to magnetic north. Now, look at your compass and you'll notice these small markings. They're known as degrees, and here's the fun bit. The needle's red end always points north, and the white or black end always points south. That's your compass's north-south dance. Plus, there's often an arrow on the compass case, right at the top. That's your orientation arrow. It was the beginning of the 20th century, and two rivals, Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen, set on their expeditions to become the first people in history to reach the South Pole. The race wasn't easy, and it ended tragically for Scott. Amundsen has won and set his tent on the pole before his rivals. A member of Scott's expedition known as Terra Nova, British geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor, not only survived the harsh conditions, but also made an unexpected discovery. He found a waterfall of what appeared to be blood at the rocky base of the glacier, which now has his name, in 1911. It took scientists more than a century to figure out what is behind the eerie coloring. A team of American scientists journeyed to Taylor Glacier with powerful electron microscopes to analyze its contents. Previous studies had scratched the surface of the Crimson Enigma, but no one had previously done a full-scale analysis of its mineralogical makeup. These researchers unleashed a whole arsenal of analytical equipment and spotted little iron-rich nanospheres. These teeny-tiny particles, 1/100th the size of human red blood cells, originate from ancient microbes. They flourish abundantly in the meltwaters of Taylor Glacier. These nanospheres are jam-packed with iron, silicon, calcium, aluminum, and sodium, forming a unique composition that paints the subglacial water a vivid shade of red. These nanospheres don't have the usual crystalline structure found in minerals, which is why previous detection methods failed to spot them. Taylor Glacier's icy depths harbor an ancient microbial community that has thrived in isolation for thousands or possibly even millions of years. This discovery could help us in the search for life outside of Earth. Dr. Ken Levy, a research scientist at Johns Hopkins University, has some impressive expertise in planetary materials and the analysis of Martian samples. He decided to find out what would happen if a Mars rover landed in Antarctica. Could it figure out what makes bloodfalls so mesmerizingly red? So, researchers treated bloodfalls as a simulated Martian landing site. They used techniques inspired by the rovers exploring the red planet. The samples they collected were sent to Johns Hopkins processing facilities. There, Livy unleashed the power of transmission electron microscopy and revealed the enigmatic nanospheres. He made the conclusion that our current methods of analyzing other planets' surfaces with rovers fall short. They can't unravel the true nature of environmental materials, especially on chilly planets like Mars. These materials might be super tiny and non-crystalline, throwing off our detection methods. To truly grasp the essence of rocky planets, we'll need transmission electron microscopes. Strapping one onto a Mars rover isn't feasible yet, but it could mean a start of a new era in space exploration. Have you ever seen a waterfall on fire? Every February, when the stars align just right, Horsetail Fall in Yosemite National Park gets a sensational makeover. As the sun sets, its rays hit the waterfall at the perfect angle, transforming it into a blazing display of vibrant orange and red hues. We don't know exactly who and when discovered this natural miracle. The original valley dwellers may have known about it, but they kept it to themselves. It wasn't until 1973 that photographer Galen Rowell captured the first known photo of the waterfall, bringing it into the limelight. Since then, the firefall has become a global sensation, spreading like wildfire on social media and drawing crowds from far and wide. This magnificent cascade draws hundreds of spectators every year, but they can only see the show under certain conditions. First things first, Horsetail Fall needs a flowing stream. If there's not enough snowpack in February, the waterfall won't have enough water to create the magic. The temperatures must be warm enough to melt the snowpack during the day. If it's too chilly, the snow will stay frozen, and the fiery spectacle won't ignite. Second, we need a clear western sky at sunset. Those sunbeams need a straight path to hit Horsetail Fall and make it come alive. And since the weather in Yosemite is ever-changing, clouds can magically clear up just in time for the show. If all the conditions are just right, you'll witness the Yosemite Firefall in all its glory for about 10 minutes. The mystery of the sailing stones in California's Death Valley National Park has puzzled scientists for years. Heavy stones seem to have a mind of their own and move across Racetrack Playa, a dried-up lakebed. They leave behind a trail on the cracked mud. There were all kinds of theories to explain this phenomenon, from magnetic fields or dust devils, which are strong whirlwinds, to mischievous pranksters. No one has actually witnessed these rocks in action, which only added to the mystery. In 2006, a NASA scientist named Ralph Lorenz entered the scene. He was studying weather conditions on other planets, but he couldn't resist the allure of Death Valley and those elusive sailing stones. He had an eureka moment while tinkering at his kitchen table with a Tupperware container. Lorenz filled the container with water, leaving a small rock poking out, and chucked it in the freezer. Then he placed this icy construction in a big tray of water with sand at the bottom and gently blew on it. The rock began to glide across the water, leaving a trail in the sand. Lorenz had been studying how ice can make big rocks float and move along tidal beaches in the Arctic Sea. Applying this knowledge, he and his research team figured out that, under certain winter conditions in Death Valley, enough water and ice could form to make the rocks float across racetrack playa in a light breeze. And as they glided, they left their mark in the muddy terrain. The River of Five Colors, Cano Cristales in Colombia, has the unofficial title of the most beautiful river in the world. For most of the year, it looks like any other regular river. The real magic happens between the wet and dry seasons, when the water level is just perfect. This unique river floor is lined with a special plant, and when the conditions are right, it bursts into a dazzling display of colors. Think vibrant reds, stunning yellows, and lush greens, all mingling with the blue water. It's like stepping into a living rainbow with 1,000 shades in between. This phenomenal display only lasts for a few weeks, from September through November. During Colombia's wet season, the river flows too fast and deep, covering up the river floor and denying the plant the sunlight it needs to turn red. And in the dry season, there's simply not enough water to support the vibrant life in the river. So you have to catch it at just the right time. The reason behind Maldivian beaches glowing in the dark at night isn't a mystery, but it doesn't make them any less impressive. It happens thanks to the bioluminescent plankton. These tiny creatures are like little underwater disco balls, emitting a cool blue glow when they are agitated or on the move. Imagine walking along the shoreline and leaving behind glowing footprints. You can even take a night swim amongst these magical plankton. Researchers have discovered that their bioluminescence is actually a clever defense mechanism against predators. When these microorganisms flash their little blue lights, it disorients and surprises their attackers. The plankton produces this light using a chemical called luciferin. These enchanting plankton can appear at any time of the year. The best chances of seeing them in all their glowing glory are from June to December. During this period, there's a higher volume of plankton in the seas of the Maldives, creating the perfect conditions for a luminous show after the sun sets and the night sky takes over. You'll only witness the magic of bioluminescent plankton when tidal currents bring them close to the shore in large numbers. It's hard to predict exactly when this spectacular show will happen, so make sure to do your research and prepare to take photos with a high ISO to capture it, exactly like it looks in travel catalogs. Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments. Put on your shades because Mercury is a hotspot. From the surface of this planet, the sun looks 3 times bigger than it does from Earth, and the light is 11 times brighter. Mercury may spin slower than Earth, but it still knows how to have a good time. One day on this planet lasts a whopping 59 Earth days. But don't worry, a year on Mercury is only 88 Earth days long, so if you want to feel like a centenarian, just divide your age by 0.25 or multiply it by 4. This way, you'll get your approximate Mercurian age. Easy peasy. And let's not forget about Mercury's funky orbit. For every 2 orbits around the sun, it spins twice. That means each hemisphere gets a full year of daylight followed by a long night. Time zones would be a mess on this planet, so we'll just stick to GMT. Ugh, did anyone forget to take out the trash? Why does it smell of rotten eggs in here? Sorry, it's because we're on Venus now, and these stinky clouds don't smell like roses. Any planet's day is basically just how long it takes for it to do a full spin on its axis. Well, Venus takes its sweet time with this, way slower than Earth, in fact. So a day on Venus lasts a whopping 243 Earth days, or almost 6,000 hours. Now here's where things get a bit tricky. Because Venus's day is so long, we actually use Earth's day as standard for keeping time on the planet. That means there's only one time zone for the whole planet. Seems convenient, huh? Venus's year is about 225 days. So if you were celebrating New Year's Eve on Earth in the year 2000, that would have been Venus's year 3251. So to keep track of time of Venus, we can use the local year, made up of 225 Earth days, but every 3 years or so, there's an extra short year made up of only 224 days. Not that confusing. We have leap years on Earth too, but it works a bit differently. We've made it to planet Earth. Woohoo! How many time zones do we have on this big blue ball? Give me a drum roll. 24. And did you know that we can actually mess with time a little bit? Yup, in about 80 countries, mostly in Europe and North America, we have something called daylight saving time. It's where we move our clocks forward an hour during the summer so we can soak up all that sweet, sweet sunshine. But beware, each country has its own rules about DST. So make sure you don't get caught snoozing when you're supposed to be working. And get this, some regions even have time zones that differ from UTC by half or quarter-hour increments. Can you imagine that the moon is getting its own time zone? The European Space Agency announced on Monday that it's time for the moon to have its own synchronized time zone. With more and more countries and private companies planning missions to our lunar neighbor, it's important that we all speak the same language when it comes to timekeeping. Right now, each mission carries Earth's coordinated universal time with it, which is fine when there are only a few missions happening at once. But with dozens of moon missions planned over the next few years, things are going to get tricky. We need a system in place to make sure everyone's on the same page, or we'll end up with different spacecraft out of sync with each other, and nobody wants that kind of chaos in space. Precise timekeeping is super important for communication and navigation, so we need to figure out a way to make sure everyone's on the same page. The ESA hasn't figured out exactly what form this new lunar time zone will take, but they're working on it. Should there be a single organization responsible for keeping lunar time? Or should we let the moon set its own time? And what about more granular time zones based on the sun's position? These are all important questions that need to be answered. When it comes to a day on Mars, it's not too different from a day on Earth. We're talking 24 hours, 39 minutes, and 35 seconds. A Martian year is 1.8 Earth years, which means the Earth year 2000 happened in Martian year 1063. Almost forgot. The Martian year has 668 local days. Phew! We sorted out the Martian calendar, but Mars will need local time zones. Because of its elongated orbit, the difference between summer and winter hours will be significant. Daylight saving time will be a thing on Mars. A year on Jupiter lasts almost 12 Earth years. Yeah, that's like a lifetime in dog years. But don't worry, they've got 12 seasons to keep things interesting, each almost as long as an Earth year, but a day on Jupiter only lasts 9 hours and 55 minutes. Also, since Jupiter doesn't have a solid surface, the clouds move at different speeds, so two free-floating atmospheric stations could experience different days. Hey, if we lived on Jupiter, we'd be in bad need of some cool app tracking all those things. Anyway, if we ever terraform Jupiter's region, most of the population will still live on Jupiter's moons, because the atmosphere is just too wild. And get this, the moon's revolution periods are connected, so we can use the same day counting system for all of them. On Io, we can have 2 standard Jovian days in 1 Earth day. How do we break that down? Well, we could have a minute of 53 seconds and an hour of 103 minutes. Or we could just stick with Earth's minute and hour and have a day that's 21 hours and 13 minutes long. How old are you? I'm 200 days old, and you? Sounds odd to you, Earth dweller, but dudes on Saturn count their age in days. A year on Saturn is crazy long, like more than 29 Earth years. Kiddos would only get a fraction of a year, while the oldest folks might get a whopping 3 years. So to keep track of time on Saturn, we could divide up a Saturnian year into 29 or 30 seasons. Oh, and fun fact, Saturn doesn't even have a solid surface, just rotating clouds that spin at different speeds. But we could still set up some cool research stations or helium extraction balloons to float around up there. 1 Uranian year lasts a whopping 84 Earth years. So to make things easier, we'll stick to using Earth years for our calculations, and natural Uranian years can be used for special occasions, like reaching 1 Uranian year old. As Uranus doesn't have a solid surface, the rotation period is all over the place. Only science missions and helium mining companies are brave enough to venture into the atmosphere. And get this, each moon has its own day and date system. Pretty confusing. Most people won't ever celebrate 1 Neptunian year old. 1 year on Neptune is like that's way too long for us humans to stick around. But don't worry, we'll still bust out the confetti and party hats for special occasions, like when it's been 2 whole years since the first spaceship hit up Neptune. As for the rest of the time, we'll just use Earth years for all our business needs. Pluto takes a whopping 240 Earth years to orbit the Sun, which is way too long to use as a year in our everyday lives. A day on Pluto is almost like a week on Earth. So, to keep track of time, we're going to divide that into 6 standard Plutonian days, 3 of light and 3 of dark. That means a standard day on Pluto will last slightly more than 1 Earth day. Now, because Pluto's axis is super tilted, using time zones would be pointless. So we'll just use 1 time zone for the whole system. Easy peasy. As for the standard Plutonian year, it'll be almost the same as the Earth year, about 343 days. But once in 10 years, we'll throw in an extra day just for kicks. That's all for now. See you on Pluto.